Could it be? But me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the command post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your commander-in-chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Tonight is going to be a, dare I say, lit show. This is going to be a very extensive show. Hopefully, we get a lot of viewer participation tonight because I gave you guys an assignment this week, 3-part series on what I found to be very interesting. Shout out to my guy, John Perez, JP, for sending this article my way. Thought it was a great way to kind of kick off the offseason, this offseason mock draft done by SB Nation, Hogs Haven for some of you that check out the site on a regular basis. It's been a really good site for the better part of probably the last 5 to 7 years, that you can go to get, consistent information regarding the team and sharp opinions. Don't always agree, but the admission is free, is my guy, Burgundy Fly Guy, used to say. Anyway, so tonight we're gonna kind of put a bow on that series by me going through that mock off season and making alterations to it, revising it a bit, doing what I would do. Okay. So he set the foundation. Now we're going to go back behind him and start to hack away at the things that he has done to make this ultimately the perfect offseason for the Washington Commanders, aside from ownership, coaching staff, things of that nature that we can't control. This is just roster, straight roster. So we'll do that. I want to start the show off, though, because I told you it's going to be a lit show. And so it's a number of different topics that I want to get to tonight. And I want to start off the show by getting you guys to start lining up your comments. The title says it all, but I'm going to go ahead and put this out here for you guys to kind of jump all over, start to formulate your thoughts and opinions. I'd like to have an open dialogue about this, but fill in the blank, okay? And if you want to super chat your answer, feel free to do that. If you want to explain, if you're not really looking to explain, if you've got a one-word answer to fill in the blank, just leave it in the comment section. Use the hashtag LouieTLive, and we'll get to as many of those as we can. But if you want to explain yourself, then you best super chat that, and then we can have a dialogue about what you had to say. But I want to know, in your opinion, your humble opinion, we're going into year 4 now. This is the 4th offseason of head coach Ron Rivera and company here in Washington. Okay. We've been through 3 different quarterback situations. We're going to have a 4th, more likely than not, to start this next season. We've had turnover in the coaching staff department. We saw a guy get fired right before the start of the season in Sam Mills III. Scott Turner just was fired. Chris Harris just left for a job in Tennessee, and it wasn't like he got a defensive coordinator job. He left for a lateral position in Tennessee. We're going to talk about that in a second. So we've seen turnover on the coaching staff. We've seen them have a philosophy, not have a philosophy, kind of be all over the place in terms of what they're looking to accomplish. We've seen them bring in free agents. Some have been successful, others have not. What is the biggest mistake that Ron Rivera has made in his tenure here in Washington? I want you guys to start loading up your comments on that question. It's a simple one. What is the biggest mistake Ron Rivera has made in his tenure here in Washington to this point? And is it fixable? Is it correctable? Can he salvage his job in this 4th season, which a lot of us think will be his final season here in Washington? Can he turn it around this offseason? Or are we at the point of no return? I'd love to hear from you guys on that subject matter. That'll be something we come back to later on in the show. I want to talk about Chris Harris. I haven't talked about that yet. Leaving for essentially the same position in Tennessee. I do think, if I'm not mistaken, and I think I can actually look that up, I do believe, however, that Chris Harris was given an alternate title as well, an additional rather title in Tennessee. He was just the defensive backs coach here in Washington. I think he was given an assistant defensive coordinator title or something like that to sweeten the pot. Let's see. See what they have. All right. Harris. Let's see. See, Tennessee Titans. Yep, they gave him to join as passing game coordinator. So that is what he will be. He'll still be coaching up the defensive backs, I believe. Let's see. Let me get the exact official title. See, Titans plan to hire Chris Harris as their defensive pass game coordinator / cornerbacks coach. So cornerbacks coach / defensive pass game coordinator. So they had to give him an additional title because Washington, for all intents and purposes, could have blocked him from interviewing with the Titans and taking the job had they not given him what is perceived to be a step up in essentially job title. Okay. So for Chris Harris, I say I wish him nothing but the best. We talked about this guy as a potential rock star here. There weren't many. So he was the name that kept getting brought up. And a lot of you shunned that because you felt like, man, he's getting all this attention, but the back end stinks at times. And look, we didn't have depth. You can kill, a lot of people for depth purposes on this team. He didn't have a lot to work with from a depth perspective. Okay. The first year they gave him Ronald Darby. You saw what he did with Darby. Darby might have had his best year of his career. You could maybe look back at one of his early seasons, maybe one in Philadelphia, maybe one in Buffalo, potentially. But I'd put any of those seasons up against the one now. He didn't have any interceptions, and maybe, one of those early years in his career, he had 2 or 3 interceptions during that season. But, man, I felt really good about Ronald Darby in that 2020 season, man. The back end was pretty tight because Ronald Darby was playing some really good coverage along with Kendall Fuller and a rookie Cam Curl in that first year of Ron Rivera here in 2020. 2021, you saw a dramatic step back. There was a lot of communication errors on the back end, a lot of finger pointing, not necessarily in a malicious way by the players, but the coaching staff, in particular, didn't, waste time pointing the fingers at the players and the lack of communication and the lack of participation in off-season training camp and things of that nature. We heard from Jack Del Rio in particular that the communication was the fault of the players because they weren't here in the off-season to work and communicate as one, and they got Bobby McCain late and all this, that, and the third. We all heard every excuse in the book. But individually, we saw a rookie in Benjamin St. Juste flash before he got injured. We saw, the continued progress of one Cam Curl and his growth and maturation. And so, the William Jackson experiment at the time, we thought this may work, but it wasn't really the best. That next year, the bottom would fall out of that thing. But then you saw the emergence of another young safety, this time in the form of Derek Forrest. All of this being done under the tutelage of Chris Harris. Not to mention, you're getting quality play out of Danny Johnson on the outside this year, which was huge. So you say what you want about Chris Harris. And again, there weren't many guys that we looked at on this particular staff with Ron Rivera that we said, hey, this guy has a chance to, move up the ranks and potentially be a head coach a la Dan Campbell someday. He's got that kind of energy. We've all seen it. We know what kind of an, coach he is and what kind of energy he brings to the field each and every single day. He brings the juice, He could easily be a Dan Campbell type, 3-4 years down the road. But as with, as the case with anybody that's worth a damn, they usually find their way out of this organization before they get sucked into the abyss known as Ashburn syndrome. So instead of getting sucked in, you get out while you still can, while there's still some juice left to your name. Okay. While there's still people checking for you. And he got out of here. And, I'm glad. I don't know if Ron and company had the ability to block him or not, but they didn't. Good for them. Let him spread his wings and fly away. I think that job title that he got is an upgrade over just being a defensive backs coach, which I think would prohibit Ron and company from blocking him from leaving. So they have a void to fill. We'll see what they decide to do there. Similar to offensive coordinator, I wouldn't be shocked if they're doing all of this, interviewing of candidates. I wouldn't be shocked if they just settle in on Ken Zampese when it's all said and done. They interview like 15 dudes and come back and say, you know what, let's just roll with Ken, man. He was here with Sam. He's comfortable with Sam. Sam's comfortable with him. Zampese is going to keep the same system essentially intact in terms of the way that it's run. There'll be some wrinkles and some things that Zampese may want to do and alter that Scott was doing, but for the most part, it'll all be the same. Scott, Sam Howell won't have to learn an entire new playbook and verbiage this season. He can just really hone in on his craft instead of worrying about whether he knows the playbook or not. I don't know. That may be what they ultimately decide, but they've also got to figure out who they're going to make their next defensive backs coach as well. So, Chris Harris, gone. Wish him nothing but best in Tennessee. We'll see if his star continues to rise with the Titans organization. It's a more stable situation. I think that's pretty much why he left. I think he was looking at this situation and understanding if he wants his trajectory to continue upward, he can't be a part of a sinking ship. Get out of here while you still have, name recognition. And, I feel like he's building momentum for himself. You've become a part of a staff that struggles next year, that Rivera gets fired, 12 games in, and you're a part of that staff. Maybe you start to lose a little bit of luster and shine. Maybe you already want to get out ahead of the train that is probably going to end up crashing. And so you say, let me get out of here. There's a lot of things he probably took into consideration. So good for him. Anyway, I digress. So I know you guys have seen some of the different things that are coming out regarding things around the league, i.e. Dan Quinn is going to be back in Dallas. That sucks. I'm just going to be honest with you. I really wanted him to take a job somewhere else. I've been really, because to me, he's the glue that's holding that Dallas Cowboys team together. Mike McCarthy, I thought, did a really good job this year of kind of just managing all of the injuries, steadying the ship. But what's really keeping that team afloat is Dan Quinn's ability to squeeze every single ounce of ability out of that defense. It was Dan Quinn's defense that after that lousy showing in week 1 that kept them afloat with Dak Prescott being out for the next 5 games, if I'm not mistaken, beating Cincinnati. Cincinnati's in the AFC Championship game for the second straight year. The Dallas Cowboys beat them 20-17 off the strength of their defense. The Rams, we didn't know at the time. They suck, but we didn't know it then. Dallas went to LA and beat the Rams when they were still a quality opponent. The Giants were a playoff team. They went to the Meadowlands. Remember, the Giants were undefeated at 3-0 early in the season, 2-0 early in the season in a week 3 matchup versus Dallas. And Dallas goes to New York on a Monday night when the Giants had a whiteout where their coach sent emails to every single season ticket holder and said, wear white. We're having a whiteout. They went to New York with Cooper Rush and won a football game. Obviously, they beat us. I mean, that's not a big accomplishment or feat, but we lost that game because defensively, Dallas dominated us. They couldn't stop us from running the ball, but we couldn't throw the shit because we couldn't protect. And we were scared after giving up 9 or 10 sacks the week prior. So he's back, which sucks because that means Dallas's defense, more likely than not, is going to be formidable yet again next year. Anyway, I digress. I'm anxious to see what Washington does this season from a philosophical standpoint. I've asked you a question. I want to give you more time to answer that question. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the off-season mock draft, or the off-season, the mock off-season rather, and put a bow on that. This is going to take a while, okay? Because I'm going through this thing with a fine-tooth comb. And we can discuss this. If you agree with some of this, great. If you don't, I'd love to hear from you. Either way, I want dialogue. I want this to be an active conversation back and forth between all of us. So with that said, I feel like I was negligent in one of the episodes, probably episode 2. I should have presented you with what I'm about to present you with now, which would have given you a clearer picture of what was being done, because some of the things that we chastise, I am guilty of this, guilty as charged, that especially when it pertains to the mock draft, I was very harsh on the latter portion of that mock draft, in particular with the kicker and the running back in the 7th round. All of this makes a lot more sense when you look at it from this lens that I'm about to display to you. So what I'm going to do is I am going to show you guys all of the free agents that Washington has on the roster this offseason. So you can see all of them lined up in front of you, and they are in the order of the amount of money that they made, their salary this past season. Okay. So they're in no particular order other than that. So if you want to know why Wes Schweitzer is at the top, because of all the guys on this list, he made the most money. So that's how that works. Anyway, let's go through. I'm going to go through this entire list, and we're going to talk about all these guys and whether they should be back or not. So remember, if you're keeping score at home, the mock off season done here had Washington re-signing just 3 guys: Deron Payne, All-Pro Revo Jeremy Reeves, and Wes Schweitzer. That was it. Everybody else he was allowing to walk. Wasn't interested in bringing back. He did, however, have one guy on this list brought back. That was Khaleke Hudson, who he tendered, which I'm going to do the same thing. Okay. Why you can tender him? He is a restricted free agent. You see that final column over there where it says UFA, which is unrestricted free agent, which means that guy can sign with whomever he likes. Washington has no say-so other than they can put a contract in front of that player as well and see if that player chooses to come back or not, if he's satisfied with the deal Washington put in front of him. If you are an RFA, Washington has first say. They can tender you, and with that tender comes a certain amount of money that Washington will have to pay that player should that player sign the tender. Other teams can match that tender. However, depending on what level that player is tendered at, that's the compensation Washington would get back. If Washington assigns a first-round tender on a player, then they would have to pay him the maximum amount of money that that tender would allow, which would be, it depends on who you are, where you drafted, all that good stuff. Or for your position, it might be like, say, $5 million for a first-round tender a year, for that 1 year, $5 million. Second-round tender might be, and again, I think it varies by position, right? But second-round tender might be $3.7 million. And a third round tender would be maybe like $2.5 million. That's what you would pay that player that season. And obviously, as you can tell, first round tender means you get a first round pick back in exchange. Second round tender, second round pick, so forth and so forth. Anyway, and then if you see ERFA, that's exclusive restricted free agent. So what that essentially means, all these designations mean is your years of service in the league. So if you're a UFA, that means you've been in the league 4 years or more. So you are allowed to go and hit the market free of restriction, and you can sign with whomever you want after the season's done. Your contract is up, and you've given out the service that is mandatory before the team that originally signed you, drafted you, or took you from somebody else's, practice squad or whatever on your rookie deal, no longer has the rights. So 4 years or more, you're a UFA when your contract is up. If you have 3 years of service, but not 4, okay? So let's say you've been in the league 3 years and maybe you played like 3 games in one season. That's not technically 4 years of service. That's a shade over 3, but you're not quite there yet. So 3 years or more, but less than 4 years, you're an RFA, restricted free agent. That team can then slap that tender on you. You sign it, you're back for a year. That's what we did with Cam Sims last year. That's what I think they're going to do with Khalil Hudson this year. If you're an ERFA, exclusive restricted free agent, that means you have less than 3 years of service in the league. So more likely than not, 2 years of service in the league. Okay. So Washington pretty much has the right of first refusal. We don't want you going anywhere. You can't go anywhere. So with that said, let's go through this chart real quick and see who I want back. I can't speak for anybody else out there. I can just speak for myself. Wes Schweitzer, I've already told you I wouldn't mind having Wes Schweitzer back. Deron Payne, I absolutely want him back. Trey Turner can go. Cam Sims, I would like to have him back. We can talk about that here in a second. Joey Sly, I wouldn't mind having him back. We'll talk about that in a second. Taylor Heineke, I would love to have him back. F.A. Obata, I wouldn't mind having him back, but I don't think he's a necessity this offseason. I would actually let him walk away. But Tyler Larson, I love what he brings to the table, but he's always injured, just like Chase Roulier. It doesn't really make sense to bring him back at this point, at his age as well. Even though, for a center, for an offensive lineman, 32 years old isn't all that old. It's still, I'm good. I can find me some younger, fresher beef up front. David Mayo, no. John Bostic, no. Jonathan Williams, interesting. I thought he played well this year. Was interested. If he was already back, I was cool with it. But because he's a free agent, I'm good. I'm actually good on Jonathan Williams. He can go. Nick Martin, he can go. Khalil Hudson, I'm going to tender him. He's a restricted free agent. I'm going to tender him. Make sure that he sticks around after the performance he turned in week 18 versus Dallas. I think he's earned the right to at least compete for some playing time next season. I want him back, and he's young, and I think he's dynamic. I've been singing his praises for the last 2 years. I don't know why he hasn't gotten some sort of role on this team, but I think he'll be back. Milo Eifler is a exclusive restricted free agent, which means he'll probably be back. He's been around the last 2 seasons, so I don't know if they would allow him to walk after, pouring into him for 2 years. We'll see. Jared Patterson is a restricted free agent. I'd actually like to see him be back here. You tender him, the lowest tender offer you can, slide his way, and you bring him back. You could even, technically let him walk like you did last year. Nobody touches him. You bring him back if you want to go about it that way. Jeremy Reeves, we already talked about him. He is a mainstay here. He needs to remain here on special teams in particular. Eli Wolf at tight end can go. Cole Holcomb, I'm interested in bringing him back. And Rashad Wildgoose, they may be interested in bringing him back. That's a guy that they worked with this year. They threw him in the fire. He got his ass burnt up, and they took him out of the fire, treated his 3rd-degree burns, and now they're hoping to repair him and have him, better because of what he's been through, and maybe be a better football player for us. I mean, he could actually be the answer to all of our slot woes. We don't know. I don't think it's him, but you just never know. A little bit of experience last year, watch some film, retool some things, more comfortable in the scheme, and maybe he's a better player next year than he was this year. That's the hope. Anyway, but in looking at this is why this is significant. We killed the mock draft and some of the moves that were made by Mark Tyler, who did this article, strictly off of the fact that he was going out and attacking positions that we felt like we had enough depth at, i.e. running back, for instance. 2 of the running backs out of the 5 guys that were here last year, J.D. McKissick, Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson, Jonathan Williams, Jared Patterson. Those were the 5 backs on the team last year. 3 obviously on the roster every single week, and 2 usually on the practice squad, or 1 inactive, and Jared Patterson on the practice squad. 2 of those guys are not under contract right now, right? That leaves you with 3 backs, and we don't know the status of J.D. McKissick. And Antonio Gibson's going into the final year of his rookie contract. So there is a need potentially for running back, but we were killing him for that. Kicker, Joey Sly is technically not under contract. I did not know this. I thought he was under contract for an additional year. Did not know they signed him to a 1-year deal, which is fine by me. That was probably the right thing to do just because you weren't sure about Joey Sly. You don't have to bring him back. So, again, he drafted a kicker in the 6th round. I killed him for that. Now it makes sense. You don't have a kicker on the roster. You have to do something at kicker. You don't bring Joey Sly back, you got to go get a kicker. So that makes a ton of sense now in looking at it from this perspective, which I didn't do the first time. And I didn't present this information to you so you could make an educated decision. Now you know. So maybe this changes the way you view some of the things that were being done. Maybe it doesn't. Either way, I just wanted to bring this to your attention. With that said, now I'm ready to address the mock offseason head on and give you the alterations and adjustments that I would make to it. And we'll start with the guys that are being re-signed. So I'm not so much as hell-bent on the amount of money being spent because we think we know. We have no idea what these contracts are going to look like. And I always, this is all I'm thinking about. I'm not thinking about the exact amount that's being spent. I'm just thinking about ballpark figures, okay? This position gets paid more than this position. I'm not willing to pay this guy or that particular position this amount of money, so I'm going to pass. That type of thing. I'm not so much as hung up on 4 years, $78 million versus 5 years, $87 million, or 4 years, $83 million over, 4 years, 78. I'm not as so much hung up on that. Are you going to pay a tackle more than you're going to pay a guard? You damn right you are. Are you willing to pay the money that it's going to take to get a free agent tackle here? Or would you rather invest that money somewhere else? Those are the types of questions that I'm asking. So he decided to re-sign 3 guys. I'm on board with all 3 of them being re-signed. I already said this. Daron Payne, definitely. He's priority number 1 for this offseason. If we're taking quarterback out of the discussion, Daron Payne is priority number 1 for this football team. Get it done. All right. I don't think it's going to be done before the start of the new league year in March. I think it's going to be they've shown us, right, a pattern of how they do business with these big time free agents that are here, homegrown product. They did it with Jonathan Allen. They did it with Terry McLaurin. This thing is going to drag out until July. Okay. Understand that. So he's going to be franchise tagged and he'll probably get that long-term deal, hopefully in July. Here's the difference though, between Jonathan Allen and Terry McLaurin. Those guys got deals done with 1 year left on their current rookie contract at the time. Daron Payne's rookie contract is up. So he could just not sign anything other than the franchise tag, Say, I'm good. I'm going to take the Brandon Sheriff Kirk Cousins route, milk you guys this year. If you decide that you want to run it back again next year, okay, pay me top dollar again. And then after that, I get to hit the free agent market and I'm going to cash in somewhere big elsewhere, somewhere else big like those other two guys did. We'll see. Hopefully that's not the case. Deron Payne, re-signed. Wes Schweitzer, re-signed. Jeremy Reeves, re-signed. I'm on board with all of that. Here's where we differ. That was it. That was it for Mark. I'm going to continue on. There are other guys that I would like to re-sign here, starting with Taylor Heineke. If you recall, and we'll get to this a little bit later on, but if you recall, he signed Andy Dalton as a free agent acquisition. I'm good on Andy. Give me Taylor Heineke at 29 years old, gunslinger. He's going to come in, throw the bitch around, whether it gets picked off or it's a touchdown or whatever. I just know he's going to make something happen. Andy Dalton is similar in that regard, but Andy Dalton's 35 and he's a statue. He doesn't move. I'll hold on to Taylor Heineke. So now, Khaleke Hudson, I'm going to tender him. He's not going anywhere. You tender him. You keep him around for one more year. You see what he's about. I think that's what Washington ultimately will do. So he'll be back. Joey Sly. So this is what I feel about Joey Sly. I told you guys already, I feel like Joey Sly needs competition, right? Well, one, he has to be re-signed first, which I think you should do, because you can't get caught out here in the kicker wilderness without something. You need a guy. Joey Sly is better than just a guy. He's proven that. Now, can you upgrade over him? Sure you can. But make no mistake about it. You can do worse in this league than Joey Sly at kicker. We've all seen some of the teams and the train wreck that they have at kicker. We sit here and we complain about our kicking situation. There are teams that would die to have a guy like Joey Sly. That's consistent to them with what they've dealt with. That said, I'm not looking to be any other team that's struggling. I'm looking to be a team with an ironclad kicker who rarely misses. When he misses, we're surprised. We shouldn't be surprised when he doesn't miss. I'm trying to get one of those kickers where when he misses, you're like, oh my God. When Justin Tucker misses a kick, Harrison Butker struggled this year for the Chiefs. We were shocked watching him struggle the way that he did this year. That's not who he's been in his career. Now, he's dealt with some injuries this year, but you're shocked when guys like that miss. When Daniel Carlson for the Raiders misses, you're shocked. McPherson for the Bengals, he struggled a little bit this season. When he misses, you're shocked. We want one of those dudes. That said, I'm giving Joey Sly a 1-year deal that has absolutely zero guarantees until the start of the regular season. He has to be on the roster when the season starts, week 1, in order for him to get his money. I won't make it incentive-based or anything of the sort. It'll be a very, standard, meager 1-year, $2.5 million deal for him, similar to whatever he got last year. But the only difference is, bro, you're not getting any guaranteed bread. The only thing you'll get is for showing up at training camp, off-season, workout bonuses, that sort of thing. But you're not guaranteed anything unless you make the team, which means you're going to have to outkick another kicker on the team, because I'm bringing in some competition. And if you don't win the competition, we're not on the hook for anything. But I'm bringing Joey Sly back. I'm making sure that at worst, I got a kicker, and I'm good. Cam Sims. I struggled with this one because the reason you drafted Sip, Christian Holmes, and Percival Butler last year in the draft was to replace a guy like Cam Sims on your roster on special teams. I don't know if you realize, but Cam Sims is no longer your go-to gunner on special teams anymore. Now, it's good to have him because if you need him, he's there, and he's still on all the other special teams units, and he's still damn good on all of those special teams units. But as far as Gunner is concerned, they got some young boys that they threw out there that were damn good at it. Percy Butler, Christian Holmes were excellent as gunners this year. And now we could just get them to be smart about downing the ball and not stepping out of bounds and being the first one to touch it, that sort of thing, which you learn as you continue on. Those boys will be A-okay as gunners. However, Cam Sims still is 6'5", and I feel like if you get the right coordinator in here that understands what his skill set is and gives him an opportunity, specifically in the red zone, I'd love to have him back. I just don't know if that jives with what they are thinking about long term. You got to free up a roster spot at receiver, I think, this year. And if you're not willing to do that with, say, a Dax Milne, then Cam Sims has to be the casualty then. And I don't know if he'll get big money from anybody. Big money is a relative term. I don't know if he'll get broken off or paid by someone, but he might get some solid money from somebody. You know, he might get some solid money from somebody. So I don't know. He's interesting. I wouldn't mind having him back personally. But if he goes out there and he finds, like, if I could get Cam Sims back on a 2-year, $8 million deal, I want him back. Bring him back right now. But if somebody's like, yo, Cam, I give you 2 years, $14 million, he can go. He can go. And I wish him nothing but the best. Anyway, and then Cole Holcomb. Let me make this abundantly clear. Love me some Cole Holcomb. I want him here. But if I can upgrade over Cole Holcomb, I would love to do so. Make no mistake about it. Okay. If I can get a David Long in free agency, yeah, I want to do that. Because I don't think it's an and situation with Cole Holcomb and a free agent. He is the free agent. Okay. It's not an and situation. You're not going to get Cole Holcomb and still dip into that linebacker free agency pool. Either it's Cole Holcomb or a free agent linebacker. So I would go dipping in that pool first, because this is the thing. No, I don't think anybody's sniffing around Cole Holcomb. Specifically because he's coming off of an injury and he didn't get to finish what was a strong start to the 2022 campaign. I just think no one's really thinking about him. So I don't think he would be on the second week of free agency when teams double back to see if after the first rush, if there's still any deals left to be had, the ones you got to go all the way to the back of the store for. He's not necessarily a pink tag deal, but he's close. You know, he's one more, season away as we go from spring to summer. He's one more season change away from having to leave the showroom floor and them saying, all right, let's mark this thing down as low as we can get it and get it off the floor. We need the space. He's not quite there yet. But because of that injury, he's moving towards the back of the store, close to that pink tag rack, where you're going to get that nice little discount, that orange tag. So I think you could go, hunting around, fishing around, sniffing around the linebackers in free agency if you're interested, and then double back and say, hey, Cole, baby, Cole, hey, we love you. And, I mean, he could probably see through that, but if he wants to be here, he'll be here. But I want Cole Holcomb back. I do. And what I've brought myself to understand is, bro, you're really not trying to spend that kind of money at linebacker right now. I'm not trying. I mean, when you still look at, we got to pay Deron Payne. I don't know what's going to become of Chase Young and Montez Sweat, but those may be guys we want back. At some point, you're going to have to do something with some of these other guys that are coming up in the game. Curtis Samuel's going into the last year of his deal. If he continues to play well for us, stays healthy, I would love to have him back. Benjamin St. Juste at some point, if he continues to play at the level. This is going to be year 3 for him. So if he plays well, let's say he stays healthy, has 4 interceptions. He just, I don't know if you guys saw, but he just had LASIK surgery, right? He said he went from having 480p vision to 4K after the LASIK. So I'm hoping that this has a Carlos Rogers effect on him. Because we saw what happened with Carlos Rogers. He left here, went to San Francisco, got his eyes done. And the first year he was there, he had like 7 picks. Couldn't catch claps in a whorehouse, as a wise man used to say. Here in Washington. Goes to San Francisco, he's catching everything in sight. Let's say next year he's got 5 picks. New site, new dude on that same lockdown shit. And now you got to pay him. Like, we got guys coming up. You got to figure out what you're going to do with Montez Sweat next year. There's no other year after next year. Then Chase is going into that year where you got to start figuring out what the hell you want to do. So I'm not willing to spend what it's going to take, I think. In my mind, I'm not willing to spend outside on a linebacker when I got guys here that I feel like, can get the job done. Even though, I would love to upgrade. And while I say that, if I can get a dude, like, I'm not willing to pay what it's going to cost to get Tremaine Edmonds. I'm not willing to do that. But I'd go after a David Long. It's not going to cost you nearly as much to get it done with him. Anyway, those are the guys that I would re-sign. Deron Payne, Wes Schweitzer, Jeremy Reeves, Taylor Heineke, Joey Sly, Cam Sims, Khalil Hudson, Cole Holcomb. I want all those guys back. Now, there are stipulations to all of those guys being back. The ones specifically at the back end, Joey Sly, Cam Sims, and Cole Holcomb. There are stipulations to those guys being back. The non-negotiables are Deron Payne, Wes Schweitzer, Jeremy Reeves, Taylor Heineke, and Khalil Hudson. Those guys I really want back. And I think I want Cole Holcomb back too. But if I can upgrade, I wouldn't mind upgrading. But I know he's not going to cost a lot of money. And I know he wants to be here. And I know he hates Dallas. And every other team in the division for that matter. He's homegrown product. You like to keep those guys around if at all possible. So we transition from re-sign. We're going through the 3 R's right now. We go from re-sign to release and restructure. So let's start by looking at the release category. And Carson Wentz, I think we all agree that he needs to be gone. I don't think anybody's willing to debate that. So he's gone. Logan Thomas being released. I don't agree with that. I say no to this. I think as much as I would love in the idea, right, of getting an athletically gifted tight end in here that could be a playmaker is very appealing. However, I really want to see what this Amani Rodgers thing turns into. I really want to see what Cole Turner can do. I really think those guys have more than what they've shown in this offense. I really, truly do. Obviously, Cole Turner's a rookie. I wasn't expecting much from him other than some red zone targets that we never got. But I wasn't expecting him to tear it up 20-20. I was expecting him to be a problem when we get inside the 10-yard line at the 7. Okay, now we about to take some shots to the end zone. Let's see what Cole Turner can do. I expect Cole Turner to be a lot more comfortable next year and an actual factor 20-20. That said, still only really spaced on the roster for 3 tight ends. Somebody's probably going to be the odd man out. 4 guys may make the team, but only 3 are probably dressing on game day. Logan Thomas, John Bates, and right now, I think Amani Rodgers has earned the right to be that 3rd tight end right now. So, I still want Logan Thomas back. Again, we've talked about all the ancillary stuff. He's a leader, locker room guy. I also believe that he was underutilized last season, and he wasn't fully healthy until probably week 10 or 11. He even said so himself. He didn't really start to feel healthy until that second Philadelphia game. That's week 10. And even then, he still didn't get opportunities to catch the football. So I'd actually, now that he's healthy, he's not rehabbing this offseason. He can just get stronger, probably get into better shape. I don't think he was in the best shape. Obviously, you're rehabbing. You're not, able to do some of the things you would be doing in a normal offseason. I think he's going to come back in tremendous shape. And I'd like to see a new offensive coordinator utilize his skill set. I still think he's got something to offer. The $5.2 million doesn't scare me because if you're going to shave that off, you're going to end up giving it to some guy on the outside coming in here, and we're not sure what we're going to get. I'd rather just give that money to Logan Thomas, let the young fellas continue to develop and see what we can do with them. And if that doesn't work, you can get out of Logan Thomas's deal next year. If you realize that, Monty Rogers is cool, but nah, or Cole Turner, not what I thought he was going to be, then you can do something next year at tight end. Chase Roulier. So this is an interesting one for me. I'm actually interested in going to Chase Roulier and asking him to restructure. Like, okay, dude, I got to switch your deal up because the money that you're making right now, you signed a 4-year, $40 million. You signed the Kendall Fuller special, after the 2020 season. You signed the Kendall Fuller special, the 4-year, $40 million contract. But since then, you haven't finished the season, partner. So here's what I want to do. I want to make your contract. I want to lessen the base salary, right? Which is going to save us some money, allow us to reallocate those resources elsewhere. And I want to make yours incentive laden. And he should be on, if he wants to stay here, he'll be on board. Because I need insurance that if you get hurt again, I'm not spending money for no reason. So here's what I want to do. I'm going to give you the same deal. It's the same deal. I'm just lowering your base, freeing up some cap space. But all of that money isn't entitled to you. You got to earn it. You got to have X amount of starts. You got to play X amount of percentage of snaps for the season. You know what I'm saying? And then you'll get the money that is in the contract. That's how I would go about Chase Roulier. If he doesn't conform to the restructure, then I cut him. This isn't, remember, I've always told you, if you're willing to ask a guy to restructure, you better be prepared to cut that guy if he says no. I'm going to Chase Roulier only because I'm prepared to cut him if he says no. Cornelius Lucas, I'm not on board with this at all. I've already told you guys, I'm not cutting a swing tackle that has shown the ability to play both sides adequately until I know I have a replacement in-house. We don't have a replacement in-house. And if you draft a young guy, you're not sure if that young guy is any good. Or in the case of Sam Cosmi, you're not sure if the young guy can stay healthy. I'm not willing to cut Cornelius Lucas just to save $3 million. I'm not penny. We're not in that tough of a financial bind that we penny pinching to the point where a guy like Cornelius Lucas making $2.8 million is a casualty here. I'm not willing to do that. I'm good. He can stay. He's not a problem. Andrew Norwell, $2.3 million. He can go. He's taking up a roster space. He's stopping somebody from getting on the field at left guard. He can go. The 2.3 isn't really of a concern to me. I'm not happy. And, you got some people, I saw a comment from somebody saying, well, Andrew Norwell actually didn't play well. PFF had him. I don't give two shits about what PFF says. I know what my eyes said. I know how I felt about Andrew Norwell. He wasn't terrible. I've said this all year, but you can do better. And he's old. Okay? I want younger. I want cheaper. I want more athletic. He's none of those things. He can go. All right. So that's the release category. Wentz, yes. Logan Thomas, no. I'm asking Chase Roulier to restructure. If he says no, he is released. Cornelius Lucas, no. I want him back. Andrew Norwell, he can go. I agree. All right. So then we get to the restructure portion. And I've already told you, I'd like to add Chase Roulier to this conversation. I'd like to add him here in the restructure category. Don't want to cut him. I'd love to restructure his deal. If he says no, he's got to go. Kendall Fuller, he's got 1 year left of his 4-year, $40 million deal. You rip that up. You give him a 3-year, $36 million deal. You restructure him, saves you money on the cap, gives him some upfront money, brings that base salary number down significantly, saves you roughly $5 to $6 million. I love it. I think that's a great move for a guy still 27 years old playing phenomenal football. All right, so now we go to key free agent signings, okay? This is what Mark Tyler decided to do. Remember, he only kept 3 guys. One of those guys was not Cole Holcomb, so he's searching for linebacker help. So he goes out and signs Tremaine Edmonds, big money deal, 5 years, $85 million. He got rid of Cornelius Lucas. We all think Sam Cosmi is probably slated to kick inside at guard at this point, so we probably need a tackle. So he goes out and gets Caleb McGarry from the Atlanta Falcons, 4 years, $68 million. Mike Gesicki, remember, he got rid of Logan Thomas, so now you need a starting tight end. He goes out and gets Mike Gesicki from the Miami Dolphins, 3 years, $36 million. He brought back Wes Schweitzer, but we did release, first of all, Trey Turner is a free agent. We're not bringing him back. And then you went ahead and killed the entire Carolina connection by moving on from Andrew Norwell. So in doing that, you need a guard. He goes out and he signs Cody Ford. Okay. 3 years, $18 million. Doesn't cost you a ton. And then he signs Andy Dalton. I've already said I'm bringing back Taylor Heineke. I want no parts of Andy Dalton. I'm good. Heineke's going to cost you a little bit more money. Look, I think Andy Dalton's going to cost you more than $3.5 million. Maybe at that point of his career, he's 35 years old. Maybe you can get him for that low number. I don't think you're getting Andy Dalton for that low number. But Heineke's going to cost you more than that. It's not going to cost you a hell of a lot more. You know, we saw like Sport Rack has some crazy numbers, and the way that they construct the amount that they think a player's worth, I think it's somewhat flawed. Heineke isn't getting anything north of $10 million a year. I think Heineke's in that $8 million range, to be honest, $7-8 million a year. And I think he'd be perfectly fine with that, to be honest with you. If Washington put a 2-year, $14 million, 3-year, $21 million deal in front of him, and obviously it's going to be incentive laden, right? He's not going to get $21 million on a 3-year deal. It might be, hey, base, you're guaranteed in this deal $9 million. There's some bonuses in there, roster bonus, workout bonus, all that stuff. That'll bring it to roughly $12 million. And then the other 9, that comes off of playtime, just like his contract was this year. For every win, he got X amount of bonus. That's how it would probably be set up. So anyway, let's go through these free agents. No on Tremaine Edmonds. As much as I would love to bring him here, first of all, if he's got options, I don't see him choosing Washington. But that's not what this is about, whether a guy would choose here or not. This is our mock off season. So this guy doesn't have any say-so. If we choose him, he's here. I don't want Tremaine Edmonds at that number because I don't want to invest that kind of money into the linebacker position right now, even though this is a damn good football player and he's young. You see how old he is? 25? Are you kidding me? I'd love to have him. But for what we're trying to do, what we're trying to build, what we're doing on the defensive line, what we're going to ultimately do on the back end, Cam Curl is going to have to get paid here shortly. Benjamin St. Juste is going to have to get paid here shortly. We're going to pay Kendall Fuller some more money here, right? Like for what we're doing around these guys, I don't think I want to dish out that kind of bread to a linebacker. But I didn't say no to bringing in a linebacker. I want David Long. I don't think David Long is going to cost you $85 million. I think you can get David Long on a 3-year, $39 million deal. You can get David Long on a 3-year, $40.5 million deal. A lot less than this on per average basis, on a year basis. I think you can get a guy that is similar in age and skill set and a lot less money. And I'll be willing to do that. Give me David Long. Caleb McGarry, right tackle for the Atlanta Falcons, 4 years, $68 million. That's good money. That's not terrible money. You're not breaking the bank or anything like that. He's not super old. He's 28 years old. Quality right tackle in the league. I got no issues with this other than I'm not looking to pay a tackle. I want to draft a tackle. We got Charles Leno Jr., who's occupying the spot now, and that's fine. He can be a placeholder for the time being. You've got Cornelius Lucas. I'm keeping him. He got rid of Cornelius Lucas, which is why a deal like this makes sense for him. It doesn't for me because I'm keeping Cornelius Lucas. I still got Sam Cosmi, even though I think when it's all said and done, we're going to kick Sam Cosmi inside to guard. He's still a viable option at tackle. And I want to draft a guy. It's a lot cheaper to draft a tackle than it is to go out and sign one like Caleb McGarry. Again, that's not break the bank money. Okay. But why pay a guy that's 28 years old a 4-year deal for $70 million roughly when I can go out and draft a dude that's 23 years old, 22, 23 years old, more athletic, all right, way less money and higher upside. That's a position where I would prefer to spend draft capital at it versus going out and getting a veteran. Okay. That said, with the money I'm saving by not attacking the tackle position, because I'm going to do that via the draft, I'm going to spend that money to upgrade over Cody Ford, who's solid, but he's not a needle mover, right? You're spending 3 years, 18. How about I up that a bit? How about I take that and I say, you know what? Instead of me paying 4 years, $68 million here, how about I spend an additional $12 million, here or so? Instead of it being 3 years, 18 for a Wes Schweitzer type, that's probably more of a backup, but you love him, can play all three interiors. How about I spice this up a bit, make it 3 years, $33 million, 3 years, $30.5 million, and go get me Evan Brown from the Lions. Guard center combo, offensive lineman who started in Detroit 2 years ago. I think he started 12 games for them. Started, if I'm not mistaken, 14 games at guard this year for them. Played exceptionally well. We know how good the Lions were up front. Evan Brown was a part of that. And I think in bringing him in and bringing back Wes Schweitzer, what you've effectively done is you've insulated. And if you can get Chase Roulier to restructure, you've insulated the center position. You've thrown resources at that position by bringing back Roulier, who will start for you at center. If he goes down again, right, you can insert Wes Schweitzer, right? If you want to keep the offensive line in terms of its, physicality up front, you could then take Evan Brown, move him to center, right? And you could stick Wes Schweitzer in at guard. Because Brown is probably more naturally a center than he is a guard. But I think he's good enough to start at guard for you as well. So I'd rather upgrade this Cody Ford move, because to me, Cody Ford is meh. Okay, dealt with some injuries too. I'm not really looking for a guy that hasn't really been able to stay healthy. This will be his third team in like 4 years in the NFL. I'm not really looking for that. Give me Cody. Give me Evan Brown from the Lions. He's just starting to come into his own. He's a guy that got it out of the mud, undrafted, was with the Giants, then the Dolphins, then he got a break with the Lions. Showed them what he could do. They gave him another opportunity. He comes back and he kills it. And they would love to keep him, but I don't know if they're going to be willing to pay him what it's going to take to keep him. I'll pay him. I have no problems giving him 3 years, $33 million, 4 years, $41 million. I got no problem doing that for him. That money that you save by not giving it out to a tackle, you can spend a little bit more on a better guard. That's what I see. Because I'm going to spend draft capital on tackle, not guard. Mike Gesicki at tight end, no, because I'm keeping Logan Thomas. Love Mike Gesicki, but I want to see, I really think we got some talented tight ends on this team, and I'd like to see them developed and given an opportunity. Because if you're going to pay Mike Gesicki and you're not going to throw him the football, what's the point of doing that? Like we need the tight ends to be involved in this offense. If you're not going to throw him the ball, what's the point of having the Dolphins franchise tag Mike Gesicki, paid him probably $12, $13 million last year under the tag and didn't throw him the football? What's the psychological sense in that? Before we go out and spend either a high draft pick or a big amount of money or a solid amount of money on a tight end, let's at least first know that we're going to throw the tight ends to football. I need to at least see a year under whomever is the coordinator or whatever the case. We need to at least know the tight ends are going to get the football in the offense before we spend anything noteworthy on that position. At least I'd like to know that, or at least know that the guy calling plays really values the tight end position. We can look at, his track record, if he's got one, and say, hey, this guy, under his play calling, this tight end had this kind of a season. Okay, well, then we know the tight end is going to get the football in this offense. Go ahead, knock yourself out. I'm going to roll with Logan Thomas for now, though. And I've already told you, I don't want any parts of Andy Dalton. So that takes us to the mock draft. I told you I'm not big on mock drafts this early. It's too early for me. You can go somewhere else and get you a way too early mock or an early mock. I'm good. What I will do, though, is I will tell you what I am willing to spend a pick on at that particular position. Also, keep in mind, and I think I saw JP Finley tweet this out maybe last week, Washington is in line to get, I think, 2 or 3 compensatory picks this year. Now, don't ask me what rounds they're going to end up being in. The compensatory picks start on the high end, round 3, low end, back into the draft, rounds, 6 and 7. So we'll see what happens. But right now, we're just going to go off the premise of the 7 picks that we do currently have. The first pick, he took Joey Porter Jr. I got no problems with that. This is my biggest gripe with that pick. He's not going to be there. He'll be the first corner gone. I liken him to that year in the draft where Patrick Surtain II and J.C. Horn were in that draft. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, they went back-to-back picks. I think Carolina took one off the board at 7 and the Broncos took one at like 8 or something like that, or something to that effect. That's what I see happening with Joey Porter Jr. Somewhere in that neighborhood, right before you get to 10, he's going to come off the board. I don't anticipate him being available at 16. That's a little bit too far down the line for a guy with his talent and skill set. I don't see how he gets to 16. I mean, if he's there, I would jump all over him, but I just don't think he'll be there. So I think he'll be gone, long gone. Anyway, what I'm willing to take with that first pick, number 16, if we were to stay there and just assume that we're not talking about trading back, all that good stuff. We're just going to take the picks as they are. These are all the picks that we currently have. This probably won't be how it goes draft day. We'll trade back. We'll have compensatory picks. All that stuff will be added to the mix. But this is what we have right now. At 16, I'd be willing to draft a corner. Doesn't matter, inside or outside. Offensive line, doesn't matter, tackle, guard, center. I prefer a tackle, but I really don't care. If you go with the model that I presented you with, then I want to tackle because I've already addressed guard. And you still have a guy in Sam Cosmi that we think can also play guard, and you still have Chris Paul from last year. So you got enough stuff at guard now and center where I don't really need to attack that as aggressively, but I do want to tackle there if you're going to go first round. So cornerback, offensive line, and then in the first round with that 16th pick, I'd be willing to go elite edge. Okay. The only one that I think will be there is Miles Murphy out of Clemson. He may be gone already. But if he were to fall to 16 and he's sitting there, I wouldn't mind. If Washington said, this is a strength of ours, we'd like to make it stronger, and we don't know if we're going to keep both Montez Sweat and Chase Young, I wouldn't have any problems with them doing that. And I just want you guys to understand, there's nothing wrong with taking a strength and making it stronger. Just so you know. Just because we have defensive ends doesn't mean you can't take another one. You can never have enough pass rushers. You can never have enough corners. You can never have enough offensive linemen. And I know Casey Toohill and James Smith-Williams aren't stopping you from taking Myles Murphy, right? So I consider that in the first round, probably only for him or the kid out of Texas Tech. But I think that kid and Anderson out of Alabama, they'll both be gone by then. I think Myles Murphy is the only one that could slip to 16. Or I'd consider an elite running back here at 16. This is the only round on the first 2 days that I'm willing to bite the bullet and take an elite running back if one were to make himself available. Bijan Robinson, I don't know if you guys watched this kid out of Texas. I've watched way too much of him this year. Texas was on TV way too often this year. And I found myself watching him, and every week this kid was ridiculous. He's probably going to be gone. But he could be there because running back gets devalued. People think, oh, I can find a running back anywhere. I mean, hell, the Chiefs found Isaiah Pacheco in the 7th round. People think that way about the running back position. He's a different specimen, though. I think someone's going to take him before 16. But I'm not even really interested in Bijan Robinson, to be honest with you. We already got our own Robinson here, okay? I'm more enamored with Jahmyr Gibbs out of Alabama. I don't know if you watched this dude, but they got him from, I think he was at Georgia Tech, and he transferred over. Everybody was transferring last year. It was ridiculous. But he ends up at Bama, and oh my stars. He's like a faster version of Alvin Kamara. And I'm watching this kid, and I'm like, he's the best player on their team offensively. Like, it's not even close. He was their best player offensively this year. He's everything we were hoping that Antonio Gibson would be. Like catching the ball out of the backfield, slasher, in between the tackles. He's got speed. I'd spend 16 on him because of what, now again, you're going to have to use him. But knowing that this is the last year of Antonio Gibson, knowing that J.D. McKissic's probably nearing the end of his career, even if he's healthy, J.D.'s no spring chicken. And when you've got 2 straight seasons ended by neck injuries, you're probably not that far away from your career being over anyway. I wouldn't mind Jahmyr Gibbs at 16. That's just me. Now, if you don't get a guy like that, I don't want a running back until day 3 of the draft. So, first pick, I'll take a corner, inside, outside, doesn't matter. Offensive lineman, doesn't matter what position. Prefer it to be tackle, but it could be guard, center, tackle, doesn't matter. But with the offseason that I've put together, it would be a tackle. I take an elite edge. Myles Murphy is probably the only guy that would be here at 16 that I would be willing to spend the pick on out of Clemson. And Jahmyr Gibbs or Bijan Robinson, an elite back. Those are the only 2 that I designate as an elite back in this year's draft. And preferably Jahmyr Gibbs because he would add everything that Brian Robinson is missing. He would add to the offense. Second pick, 47th overall. I take a corner, offensive line. Doesn't have to be an elite edge now. Just any edge rusher will do. Any guy that you're excited about that gives you good value here in the second round at 47, knock yourself out. I think we need another defensive end. F.A. Obata will be gone. James Smith-Williams is cool. Casey Toohill is cool. You can do better than those guys. All right. Last year of Montez Sweat, you got to make a decision. If he walks, you got a guy. If Chase Young's the one you want to keep, you got a guy. If Tez is the guy you're keeping and you're not sure about Chase Young, you've got a guy. Whatever the case may be, you got a guy. We need a guy. Draft a guy. And linebacker, it enters into the equation in the second round. I'll be willing to. I'm not willing to spend another first round pick on linebacker this year. Not willing to do it. But I'm listening in the second round. I'm monitoring the linebacker landscape in the second round. If a guy that I really truly believe in falls, okay, I'll take him. Third round. This is the last pick of day 2 as currently constructed. Cornerback, offensive lineman, edge rusher, linebacker again. All right. So again, if you get the corner in the first round, then you don't need him in the second round. But if you don't get him in the first round, then he's still, an option in the second round. Same thing applies. If you don't get him in the first or the second round, then you can get him in the third round. Offensive lineman, This is a little different. You could draft a tackle in the first round and come back and get a third round guard. We need help, period. They come back and get a third round center. So O-line, you pretty much every single round in this draft, O-line is a possibility. Edge rusher, I think once you get past day 2, I'm not interested. I mean, round 4 edge is okay. I think you start getting in the 5th, 6th, 7th round. But I'm just going to have edge pretty much the rest of the way. And of course, I'm interested in linebacker in the 3rd round. 4th round, now you're in day 3. Okay. Shit gets interesting now because now I'm willing to take a flyer on some positions that I wasn't willing to do in the first 2 days of the draft. Shit changes now once you get to the 4th round, into the 5th, 6th, 7th, so forth. So in the 4th round, offensive lineman, cornerback is no longer on my list of needs because you should address that within the first 2 days of the draft. I don't want to be still talking about needing a corner into day 3. Address that nickel position or outside corner, whatever you so choose, in the first 2 days of the draft, please. So offensive line, edge rusher, linebacker, running back, wide receiver, and quarterback are all in play in round number 4. Here's why. I've already told you offensive line could be a pick for every round in the draft. And wherever you get these guys is wherever you get them. But edge, same deal. I think you need another defensive end this year. I'd be actually disappointed if they didn't take a defensive end in the draft this year. And I would prefer it to not be a 7th round Shaka Toney, James Smith-Williams flyer. I'd actually like it to be a guy that you really like in the 4th round type of defensive end. Linebacker, clearly we need depth. Running back. If you don't get the elite running back, which I don't think is really on the table, but if you don't get that guy in the 1st round, I'm not interested until the 3rd day of the draft. Here's where I start getting really interested in the running back position because I think you need a dynamic pass catching, change of pace back. Because again, I don't see them paying Antonio Gibson money. Unless he breaks out this year as a dynamic kick return man, the role that he has carved out for himself on this team isn't one that gets you paid in the league. You can find guys that do what he does. So in saying that, I don't think he's going to be here past this upcoming season. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I really like Antonio Gibson, but I think running backs generally don't get paid unless you're elite. The elite of the elite get paid. Everybody else is allowed to find work elsewhere. I think he'll be in that category, find work elsewhere, personally, because they love Brian Robinson so much. So, and even if Antonio Gibson stays, you could still use a J.D. McKissick replacement. That's my way of thinking. No matter what happens, you still could use another running back, period. Wide receiver. This is the part of the draft, 4th round and later. This is when you start looking for a dynamic return man. Who didn't watch the playoffs? Even though Kevontae Turpin, I thought, screwed the pooch against the 49ers. I thought he could have ran a kickback for a touchdown. That last one that he ran right into the kicker, all he has to do, he could have picked a direction, preferably cut it back to his left. He walks into the end zone. Either way. Who didn't watch that game and think, damn, we could use one of those? Who didn't watch the Kansas City-Jacksonville game and watching Jamal Agnew break off kickoff return after return and say, damn, we couldn't use one of those? I'm sick and tired of our kickoff return and punt, return game being trashed, specifically punt return. This is the year, especially if Cam Sims isn't back. Now you got an open spot at receiver. This is the year where you need to address this shit. Stop dancing around. You had a guy and you let him leave. You effed up. Fix it. Fix it. Go find you a college football return specialist. The Patriots found one who ultimately ended up being a really good corner for him too. Go find you one, man. Sick of this shit. And quarterback. The only guy under contract right now is Sam Howell. So, I mean, technically Carson Wentz he's gone. So it's Sam Howell. Even if you bring Heineke back, you could use a developmental quarterback. Because we're not sure if Howell is a starter or he's the next Taylor Heineke. Either way, 2 years from now, one of those two dudes isn't going to be here. So it'd be nice to have a guy, maybe waiting in the wings. Or neither one of those guys are here, and the dude you draft in the 4th round this year turns out to be your backup moving forward. Who knows? We don't know. You should take a flyer on a quarterback. When you don't have one, especially, you should be taking a flyer on a quarterback every other year. Fifth round. Offensive line, edge rusher, linebacker, running back, wide receiver, quarterback. Same group again that I had from the last round. Same reasons apply. Round 6. Offensive line, edge rusher, linebacker, running back, wide receiver, and now place kicker is entered into the equation. I'm not spending a 5th round pick, even though I will allow it. I'm not spending a 5th round pick on the kicker, but I will start entertaining that in the 6th round. Joey Slye isn't under contract. I would bring him back, but I'm also thinking about bringing in a kicker. I personally would go the free agent kicker route. Not like free agents in the league, free agent rookie kicker. You scour the college football landscape, see if you can find a guy. Generally speaking, though, it's gotten more competitive over the last roughly like 5 to 7 years where teams are actually going out of their way to draft really good kickers. So if there's a guy that's really good, you're probably going to have to spend a draft pick on him. Round 7. Corner is back in the mix in the 7th round. I'll explain in a second. Corner, offensive line, edge rusher, linebacker, running back, wide receiver, place kicker, quarterback. Cornerback is back in the mix in the 7th round because in the 7th round, this is when you take what I like to call your red sticker guys, your red label guys, okay? So either they've got a red plus, which means injury concerns, all right? Either this guy has a red flag, which means he's got some off-the-field concerns, right? Or he's making a positional switch. So he's a red shirt type of player, all right? Guy was a quarterback his entire career. Armani Rodgers, essentially. Guy was a quarterback, made the switch to tight end now. He's not ready, but he's a super athlete. Draft him in the 7th round. Stash him, work with him, see what you got. Guy that's a knucklehead, been at 5 schools in 4 years, super talented, but just can't get right. This is when you take him. I don't think that's who we do. We don't do that. That's what a Dallas does, and gets a talented football player like that. We don't do that, but that's what I would do. Or the guy that's James Smith-Williams is the one that fits this bill. We took him in the 7th round, major 2 or 3 different knee injuries at NC State, very talented, could never stay healthy. That's the guy you take in the 7th round, but he's super talented. Got, a wingspan that's of someone that's 6'9", really athletic, but he's had injuries. This is the time you take him in the 7th round. So that's what I'm doing with a corner. Like when we took Jimmy Moreland, small school kid, can really play, but he went to James Madison, man. A little undersized, don't really know if he can play outside with the big boys, but hey, he's talented. That's what you do in the 7th round. I wouldn't mind doing that with a corner, just to add another one to the mix. Now, keep in mind, we got some young boys that they may believe in. Castro Fields and Wild Goose. Like, because we've given up on Wild Goose doesn't mean they've given up on Rashad Wild Goose. Castro Fields is a guy that I think they're going to work with, and they're going to say, hey, Tariq Castro Fields may actually be a good football player. He might be. But in our eyes, out of sight, out of mind. We didn't see this dude last year. Because of that, we're looking for upgrades that aren't on the roster. So anyway, that's how I would attack the draft. And obviously, we'll figure out what we do in free agency, what the compensatory picks look like, and then we'll have a better idea of what we have at our disposal. Then you know what you can play with. Because if we got 10 picks, because we got 7 already. If we end up with 10 picks, right? Now I'm willing to spend a pick on a kicker. I got 10 picks. I can afford to spend one of them on a damn place kicker now. I'm more inclined to spend 1 of 10 on a place kicker than 1 of 7 on a place kicker. You see what I'm saying here? You see where I'm going with that? So things could change. Things can change. Anyway, I digress. So that's the way I would attack the mock offseason. What says you? Love to hear from you. I've read a lot of your comments. A lot of you have some really good ideas. A lot of you are just sick and tired of being sick and tired at specific positions. I was shocked at how many Cole Holcomb supporters were in the comment section. There were a lot of you that like, Cole Holcomb's better than people give him credit for. You know, Cole Holcomb's a beast. I saw a lot of that. I was shocked. I didn't think there were as many Cole Holcomb supporters because, you know, in season, these guys are getting killed by a lot of the fan base. So it was shocking to me that absence made the heart grow fonder with Cole Holcomb. I thought some of you would be out of sight, out of mind. Okay, he didn't play the rest of the year. We need an upgrade. That was interesting to see. Anyway, I digress. So I posed a question to you guys at the top of the show, and it was revolving around Ron Rivera. And I asked you guys the biggest mistake that Ron Rivera has made in his tenure here in Washington to this point is what? Fill in the blank. Let's get to the comment section, and then I'll give you. I actually have 2. I couldn't narrow it down to 1. I have 2. I'll see. I want to see if you guys hit it first. I don't want to take any of yours, so I'll read what you guys have to say, and then we'll go from there. Trevor Patch, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, the largest mistake Ron Rivera has made is taking the head coaching position and ruining any legacy he had. Hashtag it was all Cam. I was watching a NFL cut up. I was on IG. I try not to go down the rabbit hole. I find myself doing this all too often, where I go down these rabbit holes which is why I stay off of social media, because it could happen just like that without you even knowing it. And you look up and you've wasted an hour and 30 minutes on social media. Facebook, it's a different animal because you end up on someone's page and then Facebook sticks its claws into you and they're like, hey, if you know this person, then you might know. And this is somebody from high school. And you're like, oh shit, I ain't seen this person in 10 years. You click on their page. Then you see somebody else in one of their pictures that you hadn't seen since high school. And then you click on their page. So Facebook is one animal. IG is different because everything is video and picture based. So it's visual, right? You see it and you're like, oh shit, click on it. And so it's highlights and it's clips of crazy things happening. And I ran into a Cam Newton package and they were talking about Cam Newton was that dude, and when I was looking back at some of these clips, and I knew it. I mean, we called him Superman for a reason. Like, some of the stuff he used to do was ridiculous. I just don't think he ever really got enough credit because he was in Carolina, and they didn't win, a bunch except for that 2015 year. So a lot of people think, oh, Cam was only good in 1 year. Bullshit. Cam was a beast. That said, man, he was good. Cam Newton was a problem, man. I was watching some of them clips and I was like, damn, Cam was really good in hindsight. His biggest mistake was taking this job. When people take this job, they're looking to enhance. Believe it or not, I know this sounds crazy. And you're like, Louie T, you tripping. You actually take this job to enhance your legacy. Think about it like this. Mike Shanahan came to Washington as a decorated 2-time Super Bowl winning head coach. If he was able to revitalize the Washington Redskins or the Washington organization when he came back with Kyle, and then he turned it over to Kyle when he was done, and he was able to win here. Let's say Shanahan was able to lead this team to a 3rd Super Bowl. Do you know what that would have done for his resume and for his legacy? First of all, whatever coach brings Washington back to prominence. The owner, whomever takes over, will get a huge part of the credit, and he will deserve it for rescuing us, from taking us from football poverty to actually having a chance. That owner deserves credit for that. But it's going to be that coach that we're going to revere, that we'll be talking about building statues for. First of all, nobody gets a statue until Joe Jackson Gibbs gets the statue. All right. But we'll be talking about building this next coach, whoever that guy is, whenever the hell it happens, that brings this organization back to prominence. That guy will be forever etched in the lores of Washington history. And furthermore, in the era that we live in the day and age that we live in, to see where this organization has been, I'm talking about the depths of despair. We've been at the bottom of the bottom of the bottom. Somebody brings us from the depths of hell all the way to heaven, to what feels like the great unknown, like something that we could never obtain. Someone takes us to that ultimate game and we win. Do you know what that will do for that person? Like, you're borderline Hall of Fame if you could take Washington's organization and make it a winner again. Rivera thought he was going to be that guy. I mean, that's that athletic arrogance that I talk about all the time. You have to have that in the realm of sports. You have to have some semblance of athletic arrogance or you won't make it. You've got to think, hey, I can do this shit. In spite of all that you've heard and all the shit that's going around, all the reasons that you shouldn't take this job, there are a lot of red flags, a lot of tape that you got to pull off. You know? Remember in Coming to America when Akeem asked for the most meager accommodations that they had, and he was giving them, this one apartment, and he was like, no. And he said, oh, I got a real shithole for you. Took him upstairs, had caution tape, outline of a guy and his dog. Both had been killed in the apartment, both died in the apartment, whatever the case may be. He ripped down the curtain and it was a brick wall. And Akeem looks and like, we'll take it. Right? There was no way in hell they expected Akeem to take that apartment and turn it into what Simi ultimately turned it into when he spent all the money that he did, hot tub, new TVs, all that shit. No one ever expected him to do that. No one expects anyone to come in here, and that's exactly what this organization looks like from the outside looking in. It looks exactly like that apartment. Brick wall. There's no view of outside. It's a brick wall. Caution tape blocking the door, rats running around on the floor, a couple of chalk outlines of two people or an old man that passed away and his dog. That's what this organization looks like from the outside looking in. If somebody comes in here and turns that shit into what Simi turned that apartment into, their legacy is forever etched. That's what Ron thought he was doing here. It's not over. It's not over, but it ain't looking too good for old Ronald. Is it Eugene or is it Edward? We had this discussion 15 times and I forgot already. I'm going to look it up real quick. I really feel like it's Edward. But I saw some Eugenes in there that threw me for a loop, and now it's, for whatever reason, it's stuck in my head. I'm pretty sure it's Eugene. It's Eugene. So I don't know where I got Edward from. It's Eugene. All right. I think you guys brought in Edward and it messed me up. It's Eugene. Anyway, I digress. Thank you for that, Trevor Patch. Video channel. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, video channel writes, sup, Lou? Sup, video channel? Says, can we say hindsight is 2020, but executive scouts get paid top dollar for their gigs? Not drafting Herbert, convincing Dan was the biggest mistake. I mean, you're right. Hindsight is 2020. So you started with that. So we'll make sure that we mention that, because it's easy now in present day to look back and say they should have drafted Herbert. Who was doing that back in 2020? None of us were saying that. Well, I shouldn't say that. Most of us weren't saying that. 90% of the fan base wanted Chase Young. There was about 10% out there that wanted to go in a different direction, whether it was quarterback or, there was a small population that was allowing Clinton Portis and some people like that to convince them that the kid from Clemson, Isaiah Simmons, was better than Chase Young, a better fit for this team. We already had Tez. We didn't need, Young on the other side, but Simmons was a game changer. And there was a small portion of the fan base that bought that shit. I don't know how anybody could, feed into that foolishness. This team, most of the fan base wanted Chase Young, and we wanted nothing to do with Justin Herbert or Tua, who was coming off of an injury. We wanted Burrow. If we could get Burrow, we would have done it. No hesitation. Hey, Dwayne, it was nice having you, bro, but we got a chance to get Joe Burrow. Sorry, not sorry. But we weren't doing that for Herbert or Tua at that time, coming off of the injuries that he had. It's easy to look back and say that that's what you do, but the league didn't think that highly of Justin Herbert. If the league thought he was that good, do you think Herbert would have lasted until number 7? I think he was 7 overall. If he wasn't 7, he was 6. Do you think he would have lasted that long to the Chargers? They didn't have to trade up for him. He fell into their lap. We weren't the only team that said that Justin Herbert is toolsy, but we think he's got that. He suffers from that Marcus Mariota syndrome. Not a great leader, threw to a bunch of open receivers and a wide open offense in the Pac-12. Like, there are a lot of things there that people just weren't settled on with Justin Herbert. I was one of them. I was unsettled about a number of things, including his leadership qualities. Clearly, all of that stuff is gone by the wayside now, but it's hard to look back on that and say they did the wrong thing in that moment. It's easy to say it now, looking back. But yeah, I mean, the real question then becomes, is Justin Herbert if he's here? Or do we destroy him? I hate that we even have to have those types of conversations, but that's some real shit. You get Justin Herbert here, and maybe he turns out to be Daniel Jones instead of Justin Herbert. Who knows? Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy Chris writes, hey Lou, what's up, Chris? Says, hope all is well with you and the fam. Likewise. Ron's biggest mistake is his inability to be flexible and adapt his offensive strategy to the talent. And keep in mind, Ron is a defensive coach. He's a defensive-minded guy. So in Ron's mind, I think he's more so inclined to have input on the defensive side of the football, not necessarily the offensive side. This is why it is important that he hire a really good offensive coordinator so that he can kind of steer clear of what is going on there. Things aren't working and he's got a different, view of what should be done. Then he can definitely, as the head coach, go in there and say, hey, I want to run it more. But if you're a defensive-minded guy, it is important. It is imperative that you get the right coordinator so that you don't really have to worry about. Honestly, the job of a good head coach is to surround yourself with guys that you don't have to micromanage. A good head coach delegates. Now, if you're an offensive guy and you want to call the offensive plays, that's your shit. Do your thing. But you're going to say, hey, you, defensive coordinator, handle the defense. I don't want anything to do with it. Take care of it. It's all yours. You got to make sure that you surround yourself with the right people. Right guys that you can trust to delegate to. I think he failed in that, bringing Scott Turner here, who didn't adapt the offensive talent to, his strategy to the offensive talent, rather, which we had a big problem with Scott Turner. All right, got you there. So Ryan A., thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, hope Cam Sims gets a chance on an explosive offense. I see him going somewhere like New England. They love special teams guys. He could be their new Matthew Slater. But they could also use him on offense. I can see him ending up somewhere like that. I could see him ending up somewhere like LA with the Rams. Sean McVay might be like, yo, we could use a guy like that. I could see him ending up somewhere where he gets utilized. I think a good spot for him would be a place like Tennessee. They could use as many wide receivers as they could get their hands on. You know, I think he would be a good piece for them on a team that could use some weapons. If he's not back here, he won't be out of the league. I'll assure you of that. If he's not, like a lot of dudes that leave here and they get like one more opportunity and then they're out of the league. Like, is Jaron Christian still in the league? That's the guy that I was talking about the other day. I think it was on my podcast. You know, it might have been on one of these episodes, and I was talking about Trent Williams. I think it was on the podcast. Did you guys see Trent Williams over the weekend? I was watching him against Dallas, just dominating the Cowboys and Michael Parsons and company, Dante Fowler Jr., washing these guys inside like 2 gaps over. And I'm like, man, how did we F this shit up, man? This dude's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's arguably the best player in the NFL right now. Arguably the best non-quarterback in the NFL. And he was on our team. Let that shit sink in. And we managed to F it up to the point where we got a 3rd round pick back for the best non-quarterback in the league. Are you effing kidding me? Anyway, shit is crazy to me still. Keenan Bates, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Keenan writes, what's up, Lou? What's up, Keenan? Ron's biggest mistake was trading the league's best left tackle for pennies. Look at this shit. I mean, this is crazy. I didn't bring this up because I saw Keenan's comment. Literally, I was thinking about Cam Sims leaving and staying in the league for the next 5-6 years because he's got sticking power. There are a lot of guys, Trey Quinn, Ryan Grant, Jaron Christian, guys that leave here generally don't stay in the league very long. Sua Cravens, like, we draft a guy here, we think highly of him, Bryce Love, and that guy doesn't play anywhere else, really. He might get signed somewhere else. That team quickly finds out he's not any good, and he's out of the league. That's the shit that we used to do. We don't do that anymore. But it just made me think about Jaron Christian, which made me think about Trent Williams. And here's Keenan talking about Trent Williams. He says, trading the league's best left tackle for pennies on the dollar when they could have signed Trent to a new deal. So you got to remember, in saying this, you're not wrong. So let's start there. You're not wrong, but understand what Ron was walking into. He walked into an S storm when it came to Trent Williams. Now, could he have smoothed things over with him and made Trent feel welcome like he was a top priority, which he should have been? No. Ron came in with his chest puffed out and bravado, and, it probably didn't help that Dan was in his ear saying, hey, you don't have to acquiesce to this guy. If he doesn't want to be here, get rid of his ass. That's probably what Dan was saying, because he was on that stupid shit with Bruce Allen being spiteful. And I think if Ron had to do over again, he'd have brought his monkey ass in here. And instead of his first phone call being to Greg Olsen and Thomas Davis, trying to recruit them and bring more Carolina Panthers here to Washington, instead of him doing that, his first phone call would have been to Trent Williams to say, hey, Trent, hey, I just want to let you know I just took the job. I'm going to be the new head coach here, and you're my top priority. You're the best left tackle in football, and I want to make sure that you finish your career where you started it. If that phone call happens and he sits down with Trent, I think he could have smoothed things over because Bruce was gone. But he came in here, bravado, chest out. He had to deal with the Quentin Dunbar situation and then Trent Williams situation. And he thought, I got to come in here and I got to clean house and I got to change the culture. what better statement to make than guys who don't want to be here don't have to be here? Trent didn't have to be one of those dudes, though. I did think he effed that up. But the trading portion of that, he didn't have anything to do with that. That was Bruce. If they were going to get a first-round pick for Trent, that would have had to have happened prior to, Ron Rivera getting here. They got what they could get after the situation was mucked up. They could only get what they could get. So remember, Trent hadn't played football in over, a year, and he wasn't going to play here. So there was no value to Trent Williams. You had to get what you could get. They effed up, but that wasn't really Ron. He was just trying to make the best of a situation that was already screwed up when he got here. He could have, in theory, convinced, Trent Williams that this is where he belonged. But I don't think he made a good enough attempt at doing that. So I agree with you from that standpoint. It just sucks watching him dominate the way that he's dominating in San Francisco, and understand that he's going to continue to play at a very high level for at least the next 5 to 6 years. He's nowhere near done. Let's see. Got a super chat here from 8 Taco Bell. Now my stomach hurts. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, Lou, what if we just call Gibbs back up? Gibbs 3.0, it's too late for that. We were pushing it for Gibbs 2.0. You saw how the game had passed Joe by. I mean, the players had bought into his scheme, the counter trade, the physicality, the short passes, that kind of thing. And then those things lead to play action fake and the deep passes, which, that was always a staple of Joe Gibbs' teams. Was we're going to run the football, we're going to be physical in the trenches, and then just when that defense starts to suck up, we're going to hit them over the top for the big ball. That's what we used to do with Gary Clark and Ricky Sanders, once upon a time. And he recreated that with Santana Moss. That's why Santana Moss came here and in 2005 had 1,400 and I think 85 yards, 1,405 yards, something like that, which I still believe is a franchise record, if I'm not mistaken, for a season. But anyway, Gibbs went out and got Al Saunders because he felt like the game passed him by from an offensive perspective. He needed somebody that could truly tap into what was going on in today's NFL. And he didn't think he could do that anymore. And remember, the first time he was here, there was no free agency. He didn't know how that worked. He came back, and remember the stupid shit that he was doing, even though I love Coach Gibbs, he traded a second-round pick for TJ Duckett so that the Eagles couldn't get him. And they went out and they signed Adam Archuleta instead of re-signing Ryan Clark. Like, he was playing like this was all a game to him. Like, and not to say that he didn't value stuff. This is new to him. He was like, oh shit. He was like a kid in a candy store that never had candy before. Like, I was deprived of this the first time. Like, I can actually go out and just throw money at this guy and get him to come here. This is incredible. Let's go get Brandon Lloyd, Adam Archuleta, Jeremiah Trotter. Like he was just grabbing everything, right? Everything he could get his hands on. He was just grabbing shit. And it's not how it works. We had Antonio Pierce. We had Ryan Clark. Like, you didn't have to go outside the organization to find these pieces. We had them here in Washington. He's too old now, man. And he's been out of football for too long. Can't bring Gibbs back again. We've already recycled that once. Probably got the most we could get out of him. He didn't even finish out his contract. If you remember that, he got burnt out after those 4 years. He had a 5-year deal. So, yeah, can't go back and get Gibbs a third time. Trevor Patch, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. I think this is your first one. Double up. Not sure. We're just going to double up just in case. Who writes, breaking, Frank Reich turned the plane around from heading to Carolina, where he played in 95, to return to OC position in Washington with Wentz. Yeah, right. Nobody's taking a opportunity to be a head coach and turning that down to become an offensive coordinator. That's the reverse of what guys are looking to do. Remember, Frank Reich and Jim Caldwell both said, hey, I'm good, Washington. I'm actually looking for a head coaching job. Frank Reich got his. We'll see if Caldwell gets his or not. Malia Bobbitt, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Malia writes, Cam Sims at tight end, bulk up to 250. Number 82 is 6'6", 250. That sounds good in theory. Everyone thinks that it's easy for these players to just put on weight. Again, they're not just machines. All right. You can't, like, these aren't created players. We can't just go to the settings and change their weight from 220 to 250 and bulk them up. Like, there's not just a little tab that you slide slightly to your right and make them 250. Like, you're asking a man that has probably been 200 to 220 for much of his adult life. You're asking him out of nowhere to tell his body that it's okay to gain 30 pounds and keep it on. Do you know how hard it would be for Cam Sims to keep 30 pounds on, if he could even get 30 pounds onto his frame? It ain't happening, man. We see guys all the time. You don't think that a guy like Shaka Toney wants to get bigger? You don't think Shaka Toney has tried to get bigger than 235 to 240 max? Probably more like 238. You don't think Shaka Toney's tried to get to 250, 248? Can't keep that weight on, man. It's hard. Cam Sims can't bulk up to 250. You know, that's not happening. He's the most you could probably get. Hell, what's his face tried to do that? Well, what was the guy that we got from Liberty? Shit. Can't even think of his name now. But he tried to bulk up, and he did. He got bigger, but he didn't gain 30 pounds. It was probably more like 12 pounds, and he was big. Antonio Gandy Golden, that was his name. Antonio Gandy Golden. And he had gotten bigger, noticeably bigger, but he wasn't 250. It's hard. You got to have the frame for that. And I don't think Cam Sims has the frame for that. And personally, Cam Sims is fine at receiver. If you're asking, he doesn't need a positional switch. He just needs an opportunity, I think. 8 Taco Bell, now my stomach hurts. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, yo, Lou, on some real ish, we should have a watch party for classic games. I would love to watch some 05 games with the mob. Anyhow, how are the twins? Twins are doing well. They're both walking now. Took a while to get to that point, but we're here and shit is real. We don't need to watch parties for old games. First of all, you got to stop with this 05 stuff. We didn't win the Super Bowl. You are aware of this, right? In 05. You do know that we didn't win the Super Bowl, right? You have to stop putting 05 in such high regard. We did not win a chip that year. It'd be one thing if you said, hey, we should watch every game of the 91 season over again, all the way from start to finish. Okay, we won the Super Bowl that year. It was one of the greatest teams in NFL history. You know, that make a lot more sense than talking about 05. We didn't even make it to the championship game that year. Anyway, I digress. Twins are doing well. 8 Taco Bell, now my stomach hurts. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, have you watched a lot of Howell film? I want to hear your thoughts on if you think he looks improved over his college self, including preseason games. I watched a lot of his college stuff, and obviously there's been a small sample size in the NFL, but I've seen growth from him. Like, there's still going to be some kinks that he's going to have to work out, and he won't do that unless he plays. I give you a great example. He threw a bad interception against Kansas City. All right. Remember in the preseason game, we're down and deep in our own territory, and he overshoots a guy that he's trying to hit, you know, in that second level, throws a air ball higher than everybody else, right to the safety. It's picked off, and the Chiefs have great field position. They end up scoring a touchdown off of it. He threw another bad ball against the Cowboys in the end zone. Like, these are going to happen. Those are some of the growing pains that you're going to endure with a young quarterback as he continues to feel things out, understands what he can and can't do, the speed of the game, all that stuff. I think he gained a greater perspective on how to prepare as a pro. Like I think he learned that from watching Carson Wentz and Taylor Heineke and what they did to get prepared to play on Sunday, whether it's, taking care of their bodies, film study, weight room, that kind of stuff. I think he learned how to be a pro. I think he got himself into better shape this year because he looks a lot better. He was a thicker guy. I think he got into much better shape this past year. I think the thing that I noticed the most with him was there was less wasted motion with him as a passer in the NFL. Like he's definitely taken the coaching from Ken Zampese and cut down on some of the things that, I thought made his process a little bit clunky at North Carolina. That stuff got cleaned up. The ball's coming out faster, tighter zip. When he knows where to go with it, he sees it, he lets it rip. I think there will be a better, understanding of timing and anticipation the more he plays. These are only things you can get when you play, I think you even still see that with Brock Purdy to a degree, where he's holding on to it just a tick longer because he wants to see guys get open. But the more he plays, you're starting to see him throw the ball into these tight windows, assuming that guy's going to be there where he's supposed to be. Just put the ball there and that guy will be there in timing and rhythm. So the more you play, the more, you get comfortable and you start to see some of those different elements, evolve and things of that nature. But I think he's a better quarterback now than he was in college. Absolutely. I think he was better. He was not ready. There was a point in the season last year. Had we lost to the Chicago Bears on that Thursday night to drop to 1-5, our season was over. It was done. Had that occurred with Wentz breaking his finger, I think with that pseudo bye week, you probably could have been inclined to start Sam Howell in week 7 with the way our season was going. Would that have, would you been able to sell that to the veteran players on the team? I don't know. You're waving a white flag 6 weeks into the season. And that's going to be a tough sell for the veterans who have been busting their ass all off season to prepare. And you see what the season ultimately turned into, right? But would he have been ready? I don't know if he would have been ready in week 7. I don't think he would have been ready. I think he needed all the time that he got. And would he have been, better prepared to come in and do something, say, week 14? Even you decided to make the switch week 15 to Carson Wentz, or what was it, week 17 to Carson Wentz against the Browns? Would he have been better served? Would he have been ready in that Browns game or the 49ers game prior to that? I think so. But I mean, that's nor here nor there. Anyway, I digress. Young OG Nick, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, how would you feel about releasing Curtis Samuel as a part of this trade for more picks type of deal? I don't really know what you're asking. Sounds real luckish to me. But I can tell you this because you just talk about a random trade that we haven't talked about, which you want me to go, what trade? That sounds real luckish to me. I'll just say this. I'm not in favor of releasing Curtis Samuel under any circumstance, period. That deads that conversation. So anyway, I digress. Commander Wow, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Commander Wow writes, hi, Lou. Hope all is well. Likewise. Just wanted to send my prayers out to Chris Baker, number 92, AK Swaggy, for a speedy recovery and healing. Absolutely. I meant to actually start off the show by talking about that because I got to it late. I had no idea that he had a stroke until like a day after he had announced that he had a stroke, which is crazy. And he said it was a serious stroke at that. So prayers and recovery. I mean if that stroke is as severe as he says it is, then he's got some rehabilitation in front of him. because a lot of times a stroke usually debilitates one side of your body. You know, you have to teach yourself how to use a full side of your body all over again. Your mouth is usually, you can usually tell, like they used to give us training in my past life about signs of a stroke. Someone had one at our job, and I was able to detect the stroke because I had had proper training. Crazy and coincidentally enough, because you can't, like one side of your body, whatever side is being affected, you know, that side of your body shuts down. Your brain stops functioning in the manner that it needs to, and your body isn't capable of functioning. So if it's as significant as he said, he's got some rehabilitation in front of him. I'm just glad he's okay. You know, I'm glad he's alive. But I don't know what brought on the stroke. But you know what I always like to see, and I can't say that this has anything to do with weight or whatever. I haven't seen him in a while. I did see that Big Doug had him on his show, you know, a few times throughout the course of the season, talking with him, and he looks like he's, you know, around the same size. I could be wrong, but what I always like to see from ex linemen, offensive, defensive, your body's not made to be 300 and whatever pounds. You're not athletically active so that your heart is getting the necessary work to, you know, circumvent being that big. Once you're no longer that active anymore, it's not healthy to be that size. And so I always love to see guys that are ex-offensive linemen that were 307 pounds. I see them, you know, a year or 8 months after they've retired, and they're down to like 250 something, you know, 220 something. You're like, God damn. How'd you do that quick? They take the same aggressive mindset that they had playing the game, and they apply that to getting the weight off of them because it's not healthy. I'd like to see, maybe this is something that might prompt him to say, I need to make better life choices, you know? And again, I don't know what brought it on. I'm just glad he's okay. And I hope that the rehabilitation that is in front of him isn't as significant as I think it may be, because he said it was a significant stroke. I just hope that moving forward, he's able to make some changes that allows him to never have to experience another one of these again. Thank you for that, Commander. Wow. Let's see. Trevor Patch, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Trev writes, Cole Kelly is still out there. Don't spend a pick. You are always on the Cole Kelly train. You've been pretty consistent in doing that. Keenan Bates, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Keenan. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Keenan, who writes, and cutting Eric Flowers to replace with Trey Turner. I wouldn't classify that as the biggest mistake, but it was definitely a mistake. I think we can all agree with the fact that neither one of the guards that they brought in were all that impactful. And while Eric Flowers wasn't a road grader or a dominant guard in his own right, he was better than both of those two guys. That wasn't broke. Like the same way we look at Charles Leno Jr., where, hey, could we replace him and upgrade? You damn right. Do you have to? Nah, not really. If it ain't broke, we really don't need to fix it. Some of y'all think Charles Leno Jr. is broken. I'm telling y'all, he ain't broke. It's just not as flashy or dynamic as some of the other stuff out there. It's still TikToks. You know, he ain't a Rolly where it don't TikTok at all. He TikTok and it still works. Battery's a little weaker than when you first got it, but it still works. It's still TikToks. Eric Flowers still TikTok. He still worked. Battery was fine. We went and got two dudes who, hey, any given week, the TikTok could stop. You look down at your shit and it still says 323. You're like, can't be 323. This show don't come on till 5 o'clock. Yeah, your shit stopped. That's why. I don't know. I'll just tell you this. That was a mistake. And, in season, I said one of the mistakes when I was pissed, and I want to say this was probably after the Tennessee game when I unloaded on Ron and company. It might have been that game. It was either that game or the Minnesota. It couldn't have been Minnesota because I wasn't as pissed off after Minnesota. It was after Tennessee when I was ready, when I jumped out of the car and I was pissed. I talked about all of the mistakes made, and I said you also have to, if you're gonna play the blame game, you also have to give credit where credit is due. This roster, and again, it's a low bar that was set. I am aware this roster was terrible when Ron got here in 2020, but in saying that, this roster is vastly improved. Still has work to be done on it, but it's vastly improved, and Ron and company deserve credit for that. They deserve some credit for the Cam Curls and the Jahan Dotsons and the Benjamin St. Juices and the Derek Forces of the world. They deserve credit for that. They deserve credit for Jamin Davis. So they've added to this roster. This thing is a lot more talented than when they first showed up. But in saying that, you got rid of Landon Collins. Didn't need to do that. You got rid of Eric Flowers. Didn't need to do that. You swapped out Ronald Darby for William Jackson III. How's that working out for you? Oh, I forgot. It didn't. Like, there were some moves that were made that we can question, that we can second guess. Why isn't DeAndre Carter still here? We had Dax Milne returning punts for us all year last year. Why? Wouldn't have cost you a lot of money to retain him. Anyway, I digress. Joe Rockhead J, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Joe Rockhead J. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB who writes, peace, Louie. It's good with you, man. Says, I want Holcomb back in 2 draft picks. One to be the main rotation guy, move Hudson up the ladder, and use the 2nd draft pick as a developmental guy. Goodbye to Bostink. Goodbye to Mago. Yeah. I think whatever is done in this offseason, there needs to be 2 outside line, not outsiders in outside backers, but 2 guys outside of the organization brought in. That's the way I'll say it. There needs to be 2 additions to the linebacker room that aren't currently here. So I'm on the only 3 guys that should be back at linebacker, and they may bring back Milo Eifler. They seem to really like this kid. They've spent a lot of time and energy into him, and they don't want to let him go. That's fine. But the only 3 guys that should be back: Jamin Davis, Cole Holcomb, Khaleke Hudson. Everybody else at the linebacker position should go. And you should add in 2 more guys outside of the organization via whatever method you so choose. Free agency, the draft. I prefer the draft because you're getting younger guys, cheaper labor. But if you were to get your hands on a David Long, so be it. They need to add at least 2 additional linebackers onto this roster. I agree with you. Again, if you bring Cole Holcomb back, then there is no linebacker in free agency. To your point, it's probably 2 draft picks. I'm on board with that. I'm on board with that. John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, JP, thank you for the super chat. Writes, completely random, but keep an eye on the assistant GM in Kansas City, Mike Boragonzi. Says, potential GM candidate down the road. Needs to be our guy when Mayhew is canned. We'll see what happens. When you're identifying talent like that on somebody else's staff and someone else's organization, other teams are also eyeballing that guy as well. So we may not get to him first. Somebody else may have an opening at GM and they may say, hey, this is a guy that's been waiting in the wings, been learning in Kansas City under Brett Veach, and we think this guy's phenomenal, ready to be, jump out on his own and be his own GM. we'll see. Again, we're at a bare minimum of a year away from that. Ron is going to be here at a bare minimum until the end of next season. Whether he gets canned in season or not, you're not hiring a new GM in season. So we're at least a year away from even having that discussion. And who's to say that Ron doesn't hit a home run? He swung twice and missed. Who's to say that he doesn't finally connect on a big free agent quarterback this offseason? Aaron Rodgers, I think, will be available. Who's to say that they don't go out and get Aaron Rodgers? And Rodgers didn't come here and on some Peyton Manning shit, second act, tear it up, lead us to the NFC Championship game. Who's to say Ron isn't cemented as the coach here for the next 4 or 5 years off the strength of that? I don't know. I'm just talking. Don't pay me no mind. Other than the fact that we don't know what the future holds. We don't have a current vacancy at GM, so I don't really like having conversations about positions that aren't vacant, because anything could happen. We could be saddled with Martin Mayhew for the next 6 years. JP, my guy John Perez, thank you for the super chat once again. Greatly appreciate you. Writes, double up, thank you for doubling up. Who writes, if Howell flames out, which I hope doesn't happen, could the new regime that comes in trade up for Caleb Williams in the 2024 draft? Absolutely, they could. Anything can happen. Nothing is out of bounds. But understand, and again, I hate doing this with guys that I don't like looking at minors. You guys know that. I tell you this all the time. I don't like looking at minors. I feel dirty and filthy. I need to take a bath. That's something I try to stay away from. Because you can't do nothing with that. I'm not trying to catch a case. So Caleb Williams is cool, man. But this man still has a whole nother year of college football. We do this a lot with these guys who come in, light it up. We become enamored with them. And by the time their careers are over, you've soured on them a little bit. Doesn't happen to everybody. We were all in on Andrew Luck for all 3 years of his Stanford career. We were all in on Trevor Lawrence, even though I think some people soured on him. Same with Tua. Tua's stock was never higher than that second year. He won the national championship, came back that next year. He was outstanding, got all kinds of banged up that last year at Bama. When you're waiting for a dude for 3 years, remember Fournette? There was talk of him potentially sitting out. Remember Clowney? He made that hit, and he still had a whole nother year after that. There was potential talk of those guys sitting out an entire college football year. It's hard to live up to those expectations when you've set the a bar so high. Jamar Chase, his stock was never higher than that national championship dismantling of A.J. Terrell against Clemson. He didn't even play the following year. It was a COVID year. He didn't even play. I said all of that to say this. Caleb Williams is an intriguing prospect. I'm not as high on him as everybody else is. Dude is incredibly talented. I'm not blown away by his game like everyone else is. That said, if he, is that guy, if he truly is what everyone thinks he is, and he'll be the unquestioned number one pick next season in the draft, then the likelihood is the team drafting number one overall is going to need a quarterback. That's usually how it goes. This is an anomaly this year. Okay. The Texans somehow managed to be the Texans and F this up. They had done everything correct. They put themselves in the perfect position. And I had a conversation with my buddy and we laughed about this for like 15 minutes straight. Either Lovie Smith was incredibly naive or Lovie Smith had the biggest FU on the way out in Houston. Either way, it was funny. Because either Lovie Smith was dumb enough to think a win in week 18 over the Indianapolis Colts, losing you the first overall pick, was smart and enough to keep his job, which was dumb. If they were going to fire you, they're going to fire you regardless. You've already had a terrible season. Okay. you were going to get fired regardless. One win in week 18 that proves that the team didn't quit on you against another sorry-ass team isn't going to convince ownership that you need to remain as the coach. So if he thought that way, that's funny. But you know what's even more funny? And if he did this intentionally, I love him. And I have even more respect for Lovie Smith. As if he said, man, F these dudes, man. These clowns about to fire me after I put up with all of this bullshit that they had coming in to the season. They cut down a brother at the knees last year. I took the job, took one for the team to get back into the league, and this is how they gonna do me? I got something for their ass. You gonna fire me? That's okay, but your ass won't have the number 1 pick in the draft. Get their ass, Lovey. That would be fun. That's how I choose to remember the shit. Whether he did that in that manner with that frame of mind or not remains to be seen. I can't confirm nor deny that. That's what I'm going with. Lovey said, F you. Drop and flipped the bird to him and left him the number 2 pick instead of the number 1 overall pick. Now, I've seen mock drafts where the Texans have to trade up to number 1. How comical would that be, right? Anyway, I said all of that to say this. This year is an anomaly. Most years, the number 1 overall pick team needs a quarterback. That's why they're sitting number 1. The Texans should be at 1. They need a quarterback. They screwed the pooch. They blew it. There was no way the Bears should have been able to weasel their way into number 1. Now the Bears got all the juice. The Texans should have been right there with all the juice and the squeeze. Instead, they got leftovers. Now, some damn good leftovers, but when you need a quarterback, you want to choose the one that you want. I said all of that to say that the likelihood that the number 1 overall pick next year doesn't need a quarterback and you can trade up to it. Because if this guy's as good as you all say he is, he's going number 1. Thus, if you want him, you're going to have to go up to number 1. But what if the team at number 1 is like, bro, back, chill, get off me. I'm not trading one. I want this dude. What are you going to do then? You can't force them to give you the pick. We wanted Joe Burrow in 2020. The Bengals is like, yo, stop ringing my line. Stop hitting my line. I'm not trading you, number 1. I need him. We was like, but you can get all of this shit we're going to give you to come up. And you can get the Ohio State kid. That's right in your backyard. You know how many tickets you would sell for bringing Chase Young home? Browns is like, you know how many tickets I'm going to sell when I get Joe Burrow? Point taken. I don't think you get Caleb Williams because you're going to have to get to number 1. And the team sitting in that 1 hole is probably going to need a quarterback. But it's not a 0% chance. I said all of that to say this. It's not a 0% chance. New ownership group comes in. That owner could be overzealous and want to win at any cost. That next year after coming in here, that first year, watching Ron struggle, watching Sam Howell struggle, he could say, I need a new GM, I need a new head coach, I need a new quarterback, and I'm willing to go get the best of all of it. Does that sound like another owner? That, you know, that actually might be pretty scary if that shit happened. But I digress yet again. OE Mac, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. OE Mac writes, do you think Fedarian Mathis was drafted as insurance in case Deron Payne leaves in the next year or so? That's what I thought when we drafted him. That's not out of the realm of possibility. That could have been one way of looking at it. I don't think that's what they were thinking at the time. I think that did, factor into the decision to pull the trigger, on Fedarian in the second round. But I think it was more about the lack of depth. Remember, going into the season, there was no, what's my guy's name that we got from, there was no John Ridgeway when the season started initially. We didn't get John Ridgeway until like week 2 or 3 after we put in a waiver claim from Dallas. There was no John Ridgeway when this thing was getting underway. Like Patoa Ia, the guy that played at the end of the season, who I actually was really impressed with against Dallas, thought he played his ass off. Like, hey, I want to see more of this shit. He wasn't on the roster then. It was Daniel Wise, the Bama Wall, and then you had to start talking about, David Bada and guys like that. I mean, the shit was slim inside. You move on from all of your depth, which we did. You cut Matt Ioannidis and you let Tim Settle leave. You got no depth behind the Bama Wall. I think it was more about that, providing them with some depth, because you like to keep the big guys fresh inside, than anything else. But I'd be lying to you if I said I didn't think baked into that second round pick was the thought process of, hey, if we can't retain Duran, it's good to know that we got a guy that can slide in, that went to Alabama, that we feel really good about, that can come in and give us everything Duran was giving us. May not be, a dynamic pass rusher, and he's not the athlete that Duran is, but, we got Jonathan Allen. We'll be okay. It'll suffice. I think that was part of the thought process, but I don't think that was the motivating or driving force behind it. I think it was more like, hey, we don't have any depth. And that this particular draft was not deep at defensive tackle, the one that just passed in 2023 or 2, excuse me. It was not deep at defensive tackle. So once you got to that point, they saw the drop off. They saw the cliff. They looked over that shit and it was like, pretty steep fall. I think we should grab our defensive tackle now before we fall off the cliff. So you could look at it that way and say they were drafting his replacement. I don't think they're letting him leave. They'd be some damn fools to let him go. Damn fools. Ron, he's a lot of things. Stupid isn't one of them. You call Ron a lot of stuff. I don't think dumb is one of them. Brandon J, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Brandon J, writes, what up, Lou? What's up, Brandon J? Says, question. I've been seeing a lot of Dallas content creators talking about replacing Kellen Moore. Scott Turner keeps coming up. I'm thinking if Washington fired him, why would we want him? I would love Scott Turner to end up in Dallas. If you had problems with Kellen Moore, wait till you get a load of Scott Turner. I'd love nothing more than Scott Turner to go in there. It would be like us sabotaging Dallas from the outside, sending in a double agent in there to wreak havoc from the inside. I mean, actually, I'd be in favor of Kellen Moore getting a coaching job, leaving Dallas, and you having to replace him and getting Scott Turner. That would be like killing two birds with one stone, firing his ass here so that he can no longer be destructive in Washington, and then sending him to a division rival to destroy them from within. That's some diabolical shit. If only we were that smart to be able to pull off something like that. That takes some tact. That takes some know-how. But more importantly, that takes some evil, diabolical shit that we don't have. But boy, that'd be great. Because all the shit Dan Quinn's doing, he'd undo it on offense. For sure. And he's not incapable of calling a good offense. And with Dak Prescott, he might be dangerous with some of the weapons. He can draw some shit up. But you're going to have some issues. Like if you had issues now, like Dak threw a pick on 2nd and 2, and like, why are we running the football? You think you got some issues in the red zone and situationally now? And y'all actually do some good shit in the red zone. Y'all got some cute shit in the red zone. Your red zone offense would go to hell in a handbasket. Brandon, trust me when I tell you this. You don't want Scott Turner. But if somebody called me on behalf of Scott Turner for the Cowboys, I'd recommend him. Ding! But seriously, Brandon, tell everybody out there in Cowboys Nation, y'all don't want any parts of this dude. But secretly, if Kellen Moore moved on, because you're not going to fire Kellen Moore. Jerry Jones isn't getting rid of Kellen Moore. Okay, so you can all go ahead and cancel Christmas on that. But if he got a job and left, and you needed to replace him, I'm praying that you replace him with Scott Turner. Anyway, you're all over it, Brandon. If we fired him, why would you want him? And I'm telling you firsthand, you don't. John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, JP, writes, Ron's biggest mistake was not getting Fields in 2021, as well as taking the job in the first place. Plus, I would really like Waller. So let's talk about that right now. I've had people come at me, one guy in particular, the Juice Alert, who is a Packers fan that I always go back and forth with on Twitter from time to time, because he likes to poke the bear. I'll be minding my business, and out of nowhere, I get caught with a stray, and I'm like, why are you messing with me? Because if I really direct this energy, you're going to want to block me. Like, just leave me alone. Stop, okay? Because you really don't want this smoke, man. Anyway, he was like, we should have drafted Fields in 2021. I'm not a Justin Fields fan, although I'd be lying if I told you I haven't been impressed with what he's done with his legs. I still am not impressed with what he's done with his arm, and that ultimately is going to be what separates him in this league. There are guys that can run in this league, all right, and we're getting more and more of them into the league, all right? But ultimately, what's going to allow you to have sticking power, what's ultimately going to take you from, hey, that guy's a playmaker, to, damn, that dude's a hell of a quarterback, is your ability to throw from the pocket or just throw in general. And I haven't been impressed with Justin Fields' ability to do that yet. So I'm not on board with that. However, again, we don't know. You put him in Washington with some better targets. He didn't have a single guy that is even remotely close to Terry McLaurin on his roster. All right. I'm pretty sure he did not play with Terry. He got there after Terry left, but or he might have been there for 1 year, but he wasn't the starter. Haskins was, and he might have been behind Dwayne that year. Whatever the case may be, I'm pretty sure he knows Terry. I'm pretty sure he's thrown to Terry before. He might have had more success here. Who's to say? I won't play that game, but I do think that's an interesting take, JP. I do. Because there are other people who feel that way, that we should have taken Fields, should have traded up. And Ron and company alluded to after that draft that they picked up the phone and they called some teams inquiring about potentially trading up for a quarterback. I believe that to be Justin Fields. And they didn't like the asking price. And my thing is if you love a guy, you don't care what the asking price is. Remember Ron told us when the Rams got Matthew Stafford and they won the Super Bowl, and he said, does anybody care what they paid? And we're like, actually, I care. And somebody was like, yeah, actually, I care, Ron. And another fan was like, actually, Ron, yeah, I do care. And another fan was like, yeah, Ron, actually, yeah, we all care, Ron. Yeah, no, we care about the price. Because sometimes the price, yeah, you won the Super Bowl. And ultimately, we don't care about the price if you can guarantee us a Super Bowl. But you're not guaranteed anything with Matthew Stafford. You're not guaranteed anything with anybody, but specifically Matthew Stafford. I don't really know if they loved Justin Fields, because if they did, they would have given whatever they felt like they needed to give up to get him. Clearly, they didn't love him. Neither did I. Now, Darren Waller, you had asked me on socials the other day that Darren Waller may be available. Raiders don't want to pay him. He was a little disgruntled with how that situation was handled last year. I don't think they're really interested in paying another positional player the kind of money that he's going to command. And thus, I think that he may be available. That said, you asked me, was I interested? And I said, no. And I didn't elaborate because it was too much to elaborate on in Twitter form. So no, I'm good. Here's the elaboration. One, the Raiders aren't giving him away. You're going to have to give up some draft capital for him. That's one, which it's not a big hindrance. If you really like him, if you really think you're a tight end away from your offense being complete and you're ready to rock and roll, yeah, do that. That's not where we are. And frankly, I just told you, I'm not really looking to overinvest in certain positions. Tight end is one of them. I'm not looking to spend big money on the tight end position. When I feel like we've got some homegrown talent here that we could develop that may turn out to be really good in this league. Who's to say? I still think Logan Thomas has something to give. So I'm not looking to, if the cupboard were completely bare, yeah, I wouldn't mind adding Darren Waller. We may have Darren Waller already on the team in the form of Armani Rogers. That was his first year tight end, and I was damn impressed by what I saw. So, no, I'm not. And then, 2, you've got to pay this man. Big money, too. 3, he hasn't been healthy, specifically last year in particular. How many games did he play in last year? 8, maybe? Maybe 8. How many did he play in the year before that? He had to miss every bit of 2 or 3, maybe 4 or 5 games. And he was really good 2 years ago. Had to miss every bit of 4 or 5 games that year. I'm good. I just don't think the investment is going to be worth the payoff. That risk is a little too high for me. When I think we got some stuff, I'm not interested in Waller. Again, I'm not really interested in spending big money at positions where I either think we have something that we might be able to see grow and develop, or you can draft a guy. There's certain positions I'm willing to spend money on for free agency help, free agent help at. I'll spend money at guard. You can draft one, but it's not going to break the bank spending money on a guard. I'll even spend on a tight end, but not the level of Darren Waller. He's going to get broken off by somebody. I don't want to be the one to do it. I'm not willing to spend that kind of money at tight end. Not unless it's a guy that's done it here for us for 3 or 4 years, and then you're like, yo, we got to keep this dude. No, I'm not willing to break him off. We did it for Jordan Reed. See how that turned out for us. Again, that's not a fair, apples to apples comparison, but I was willing to spend on Jordan Reed. That was our stuff. He was our stuff, and he had done it here. I'm good on Darren Waller. Brandon J, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. My guy Brandon J writes, Lou, what do you want for the 16th pick? What or who? What position? I've already given that out tonight. Quickly to recap: corner, offensive line, elite edge rusher, or an elite running back. But what do I want for the pick? That's a good question, because one, you could be luck. Just a thought. You could be luck, and you could be asking this question, but it's a serious question, so I'll answer it. But even if it is luck, it's not a D's nuts type of question. But you said what, not who. What could be D's nuts, right? Theoretically speaking. But anyway, I'm gonna answer the question because I think it's a legitimate question. If we weren't taking a player at 16, it really would depend on who's coming up, what you're coming up for, this, that, and the third. Like I said, everything depends on what that team is coming up for, how desperate they are. All that stuff matters. It factors in. You saw what happened last year when we were at 11. The Saints wanted Chris Olave bad. You see what they gave up. Look what we turned it into. It could turn out to be a big trade for us. A foundation, building block sort of a trade. We'll see. Anyway, I digress. That felt luckish, just so you know. Joe Rockhead J, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. my guy, Joe Rockhead J, double up, thank you for doubling up, who writes, too many fans are counting on polarity. Even if we can't reach the playoffs with Sam Howell, that doesn't mean we're only winning 4 or 5 games. This is the conversation that nobody likes to have, Joe Rockhead J. The conversation about living on one end of the spectrum or the other. Whereas you just cleaned it up in a nice, neat, tidy box, polarity. There's no in between for the people that make comments like, hey, we should start Sam Howell this year, and if he doesn't work out, we'll suck and we'll get a high pick and we'll get a quarterback next year. That's my favorite comment. That's league-wide. That's not just Washington fans, by the way. My buddy is a Raiders fan, and he's like, we should roll with Jarrett Stidham because if he sucks, guess what? We'll be in a position to draft the quarterback next year. And I'm like, bro, you and I both know that's not how this shit works a lot of times. Now, the Raiders were this close to being, remember, like week 9 or so, the Raiders were like the second pick in the draft. Like they were this close to being bad enough this year to get a quarterback. But then they won like 5 out of 6 or some shit like that. And they were no longer in that conversation. Do you know how hard it is to be one of the worst teams in football? Do you know what that takes? Do you know what that entails? Fans are exactly that, fans. And they don't understand what a grind it is to show up at work every day, put in the amount of work, watch the film, lift the weights, go out on the practice field. It's 24 degrees outside. You're freezing your nuts off. They don't understand that. They're not doing that shit to lose so that they can get a quarterback next year. Okay. I'm putting in all this work, all this film studies, lifting all these weights. I'm in the cold tub. I'm in here doing all this stuff to get my body ready to play in a game. I feel like shit. I'm going out and practicing. Ankle hurts, back hurts. All of this stuff is bothering me. Not so I can lose, but so I can win. We could be 1-10. I'm trying to win. And then win again. And then win again. And you could be on the track to the first overall pick and end up with the 7th pick. These players are not a part of the plan of losing to get a quarterback. These coaches, they go through it too. They're not seeing their family, the way that they should 7 days out of the week. This isn't dad'll be back on Monday and Tuesday and then things start to ramp. No, dad's in the office on Monday watching film from Sunday's game. Dad's in the office on Tuesday trying to figure out how can we start to put together a game plan to beat the upcoming opponent. Wednesday, we're installing that shit. Now we're watching some clips from practice to see what was done. And we're still putting together some stuff because now we got red zone, and we got to figure out how we're going to attack them here. And there's so much shit you got to do every week. You think the coaching staff's trying to lose? No. Only fans think that way. Well, hey, Sam Howell starts. If he sucks, we'll get a high pick and get a quarterback next year. The likelihood is, even if Sam Howell is ass, we're winning 6 or 7 games. That's the reality of the situation. More likely than not. Now, somebody made a compelling point earlier this offseason. I want to say it was like 2 weeks ago, where he said, I think this is the year where the bottom falls out, Louie. And I dismissed it, as I often do when someone says something to that effect. But, after sitting down and thinking about it, and he said, he had listed some reasons. He said it was too long on YouTube to do it because I remember that night asking him during his super chat, like, why? I'm not dismissing you altogether. I just want to know why. But it was too much. You only have so many characters on a super chat. He's like, I'm not going to super chat 15 times to get all of this in. So he wrote me a thesis, right? But I read it and it was compelling. And I remember after that show, before I had read his War and Peace novel, I remember thinking to myself, you know how close we were the last 2 seasons? You know how close we were to being a 3-win team each of the last 2 seasons? I mean, think about 2021. Think about the Giants game, our first win of the season. That was a loss. Dustin Hopkins missed the field goal. If Dexter Lawrence doesn't jump off sides, we lose that game. We're 0-2. Do you really? We were 0-3. Remember, we were going to Buffalo the next week, which is why that Giants game was so important. We're 0-3. That season could be dead. If you're 0-3, you don't go to Atlanta and play the kind of game. That was a back and forth seesaw affair. If Matt Ryan and that really it's the offensive coordinator, if their dumbass offensive coordinator, who they were killing us all game long, all they had to do was drop Matt Ryan back, we couldn't stop anybody. They were killing us. Cordero Patterson was single-handedly tearing us a new asshole. We had no answers for him. On the possession where we needed a stop in order to get the ball back to have a chance to win, they got to second down. They had a second down and like 6. They got like a 4-yard run on first down or a 4-yard pass, something like that. And or maybe they ran it on first down, whatever. They got stopped for like a no gain or a gain of 1 or something like that. And then they threw, I think they ran it. They had no success really running in the second half. And they ran it on 2nd and 9, and it brought up a 3rd and like 7 or something. And they threw a wide receiver screen and they bailed us out. I was like, thank you, Jesus. They just drop him back. Somebody would have been open 12 yards down the field for a first down. We were awful on defense early in that season. We couldn't have stopped anything. They bailed us out, and then Heineke had some magic. J.D. McKissick catches it, dives into the end zone. We win that game. We could have easily and should have easily lost that game. We would have been 0-4. Think about that season. We were 2-6 at the bye. You could have been 0-8. You were closer to being 0-8 than you were 4-4. If you go into the bye week 0-8, you're not beating Tampa Bay. You're not beating Carolina. You're not beating the Raiders. You're not beating Seattle. Maybe you win 1 or 2 of those games. You're not beating Tampa. That's for damn sure. You're probably not beating Carolina because remember, that was Cam Newton coming back home. That felt like a playoff game. I talked to people that were in the building that day, and they said that shit had a playoff-like atmosphere, especially at the beginning. We could have easily ended up 3-14, 4-13 in 2021, but we were 7-10. Look at 2022. And you think about some of those games. And Jacksonville should have beat us. I mean, when you think about all the mistakes the Jaguars made in that game, from Trevor Lawrence missing a wide open Travis Etienne on the first possession to Travis Etienne dropping a touchdown on 4th down with nobody in front of him, to Lawrence missing an open, wide open receiver down the field for a big gain, to him hitting Travis Etienne or Christian Kirk. I can't remember who was up the seam, but throwing it in a way that made him have to jump up, fall down on the ground, and they ended up having to settle for a field goal. Their field goal kicker missed the field goal. Like, they did so much stupid shit in that game. They should have beat us. But we won. How about our second win of the season against Chicago? They dominated us in that game. We were awful in that game. They turned it over on special teams, and Justin Fields turned it over in the red zone. We went from a team that couldn't buy a turnover. We had all the monopoly money, and we still couldn't buy a turnover. To having all kinds of crazy shit happen. They got stopped turnover on downs on one possession. One skips off somebody's helmet into the air. Jonathan Allen picks it off. They get all the way down there. At the end of the game, he's got an open receiver, and he overthrows him by 3 yards. The tight end is open. You guys forget this. Tight end's open. It's an easy touchdown. He overthrows it by 1.5 yards. There's nobody within 3 yards of the tight end. It's a touchdown. And then the next play, on 4th down, that one might have been 2nd down, but on 4th down, he's got a touchdown. The receiver bobbles it. All he has to do is catch it cleanly. He catches that. It doesn't matter what Benjamin St. Juste does. That's a touchdown. We lose. That should have been a loss. After Joey Slye missed a field goal that would have made it an 8-point game and essentially put it away, we should have lost that game. But we won. You think about the Colts game, we had no business beating the Indianapolis Colts. Zero. None. It took every ounce of Taylor Heineke's magic to pull us out of that one, and he got us into the mess in the first place. We should have lost that game. They had no business winning it. We don't win games like that. That's what made that game such an exhilarating win. Because we don't do that. We don't. There was this crazy stat. I remember giving it to you guys at the time. I can't remember what that stat is, but we had lost probably like our last like 40 some odd games in situations like that. When we were down, you know, I think it was 7 or more points. It was 2 scores. We were down 2 scores with less than 4 minutes in the game. We were like 0-42 or some shit like that before the Colts game. We should have lost that game. We had no business winning that game. We should have lost the Atlanta Falcons game. If they would have just run the ball, they had plenty of time. What are you throwing a ball for? They were gutting us on the ground. I mean, absolutely cutting us open and taking all of our guts and everything out, and they threw it. And he got deflected and it got picked off. Wow! I said all of that to say this. Understand how close we were to being an 11-win team. Because the Vikings game, the Titans game, there were games in there that we could have won that we lost. The Giants' first game, hell, the Giants' second game. But understand, we were much closer to 3 or 4 wins with all the shit that I just said than we were the 11 or 12 wins that we could have had if the ball would have bounced our way in some of those games. So in thinking about what that person said a couple of weeks ago, could we be absolutely ass? Hell yeah. Could happen to anybody. The bottom could absolutely fall out. He's like, Ron's going to get fired. You got new ownership. This shit could go sideways. Yeah, absolutely. It could go off the rails. I agree. But the likelihood is it won't. It won't. And the polarity is the thing that kills me, is because it's one or the other. There's no in between with the fans that say, hey, start Sam Howell. If he's good, we got a quarterback. If he's not, we'll get a quarterback next year. We'll suck. Well, have you considered the alternative that we're neither of those things. We're not either bad enough to get the quarterback that you desire, but we're not good enough that we can confirm that Sam Howell is the guy. You do realize that there is an in between, right? Now, you could theoretically trade up. You trade wherever you want, but you still may not get the guy that you ultimately covet. Because as I've mentioned, every year I say the same thing because, you know, just like this scenario, fans love to say, hey, I want to trade back, or we can trade up. Well, somebody else has to want to move out of a spot so that you can move into that spot. Trades aren't singular. So, anyway. I digress. Thank you for that super chat, Joe Rockhead. Jay, ate Taco Bell, now my stomach hurts. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Ate Taco Bell, now my stomach hurts. Right. Let's do an imagine if scenario. Imagine if this 2022 defense had Sean Taylor. My God, the 2005's defense was Sean Taylor. Greg schemed the whole defense around Sean. 2022 with Sean T. Man, I don't know. Crazy. What you fail to mention is that in 2005, if I had to guess, and I can't confirm this, I really feel like we had 2 guys over double-digit sacks that year. If Philip Daniels wasn't over 10 sacks, like 10 and a half, like he didn't barely creep over 10. He was hovering around it. And Marcus Washington, if he wasn't over 10, he was hovering around it. And we got pressure on the quarterback. I don't think Andre Carter was a part of those teams in 05. I think he might have been there for 07. He might have been there in 05. He was another guy that would have probably had, 7.5, 8.5 sacks, something like we got after the quarterback. Like, don't forget that. This team was okay at getting after the quarterback, but I think they might have been better. They didn't have Deron Payne or Jonathan Allen inside, obviously, but the edge pressure was better than what we're providing this season. To me, at least. Anyway, I digress. 8 Taco Bell, now my stomach hurts. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes? 05 was my Super Bowl, Lou. But yeah, let's watch 91. But that's the thing is, it can be your Super Bowl, but it's not everybody else's Super Bowl, is what I'm trying to convey to you. Like, you hold 05 in such high regard and reverence, and that's okay for you. But, and there were some moments in 05, obviously the Monday Night Miracle against Dallas, if I'm not mistaken, we also kicked their ass at the end of the season to clinch the playoff spot. Or was that 07? Might have my years mixed up. Maybe it didn't clinch the playoffs, but I feel like we kicked their ass late in the season in Washington, like 31-7 or some shit like that. I very vividly remember Drew Bledsoe being a quarterback, kicking their ass, sweeping them that year. Obviously, the 05 season ended in Philadelphia with the Sean Taylor dive to clinch the playoff berth. So I may have my seasons mixed up. But I feel like we swept them, Dallas, that year. That season was fun. It had its moments. But we didn't win anything of note. So, yeah, 91 would be something you would be able to do that with. You know what would be fun about 91 if you went back and watched? How basic football was in those days. It was very simple. I've gone back and watched a lot of those 91 games against the Falcons in the regular season. And then we beat them up in the playoffs that year in the rain. That was the seat cushion game. I went back and watched the Oilers game from 91. We played them in the regular season that year. We played the Steelers in that season in 91. Obviously, we beat all of these teams. Our only losses in the regular season came to Dallas beat us the first game, and then the final game of the season, we didn't need it, so we didn't play our starters. I forgot who we played in that game, but that's nor here nor there. The bottom line is, it was a simple game, man. It was a lot different than what you see now. You go back and watch that, and you're like, what the F, man? Some of your heads would explode if you watched games from like 91. Brandon J, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Brandon J writes, last thing, we kept DQ. Sorry, Lou. That's our guy. I already talked about it, man. I wanted him gone so bad. I was like, when I heard he was interviewing for the Broncos job, I was like, yes. I was on some Napoleon Dynamite shit. Yes. Right? I couldn't get too excited because he hadn't taken the job. He just took an interview. So I had to do the Napoleon Dynamite. Like, because I'm like, that's the perfect job for him. Tailor-made defense, set up, veteran quarterback that he's very familiar with because he had experience with Russell Wilson when he was in Seattle. So I'm pretty sure he's like, yo, I can win with Russ. They got talent on offense. This is a great job. And then he goes in there for the interview and he probably just wasn't feeling it. Like, he wasn't feeling the vibe. And he was like, yeah, nah, I'd rather go back to Dallas. Got some unfinished business there. Like, when you're in a position like he's in demand every year because Dallas's defense is going to be rock solid every year. And you can pick and choose when you're in that position. He's doing the right thing. You can be really choosy. I think a lot of these coaches are like, this is not a great year to be a head coach on the prowl looking for a job. Like Sean Payton, the reason he hasn't chosen a destination because it ain't shit out there. He's like, damn, the best shit out here is probably Arizona. I don't want that shit. Kyler Murray ass coming off an injury. I don't even know if he's good at quarterback. Like, there's question marks about Kyler Murray. I have plenty. Then there's Denver, and you're like, yo, I really don't want to F with Russ. I'm good, man. Like, then there's Indy, you're like, ugh. I don't know what the hell they're going to do at quarterback. I mean, they're in a position to get one, but still, I don't even like the stuff they got out there. That's tough. Then you go, Houston, I really don't want any parts of that shit. It's really not a good situation. And I think what you're seeing, Carolina already filled theirs. What you're seeing is teams are pretty much, I mean, coaches are pretty much saying, man, there's some bullshit out here. I'm good. Like, if I don't have to, like, Frank Reich is in no position to turn some shit down. Jim Caldwell is in no position to turn some shit down. Dan Quinn, he is. He can do that. Because next year, Sean Payton can say, you know what? I'm good. I'm going back to Fox. This shit right here, this ain't it. If I was Sean Payton, I definitely would go back to Fox. This shit ain't it. By him interviewing in the same spot 3 times, and it tells you, if you sold on a destination, you go there one time, you sit down, you talk with them, you like, yo, that's the one. Y'all make it happen. I want the job. If he would have said the word already, somebody would have already traded a 1 or a 2 to New Orleans for Sean Payton, and that shit's done. He's still mulling over, do I really want to coach this year? Do I really want to jump into one of these teams? Just wait. This ain't the year to be wanting to be a head coach. This is the year to be an offensive coordinator, not a head coach. Yo, dude, I just wanted him to go to Denver so bad. Just like last year, I wanted him to go to Jacksonville so bad. Those were the jobs that even Denver last year, I was like, come on, Dan. You know you want to coach again? He's like, nah, I like being in the booth with my hat turned backwards, being cool, standing up, watching the game, and kicking ass as a D coordinator. This shit is fun. All of the fun and none of the stress of being a head coach. I can dig this shit for another year or two. Damn it, Dan. I wanted you out of there. Bloodshot Sports. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Bloodshot Sports writes, Lou, if we change the offensive scheme, I think it would be a disaster. If I was Ron, I would go with Ken Zampese. That's, I think, one of the prevailing thoughts. If you're a stickler for continuity, building off of what was already done, then you want Ken Zampese to get this job. If you're looking for radical change, which I think 85 to 90% of the fan base is looking for, radical change, which will come at, I think it will come at the expense of Sam Howell to a degree, because he's got to learn a whole new system. But you're like, hey, look, that's what these dudes get paid for. He can learn a system. He's a smart guy, figure shit out. But yeah, no, we don't want to retain any of the shit we were doing last year. We want to blow it up, do everything all over, want new. And I understand that too. I don't think you're wrong either way, whether you want change, radical change from an offensive philosophy standpoint, or just an execution standpoint, or you want to kind of continue with what was built last year, what Sam's comfortable with, and roll with that. I don't think either is necessarily wrong. Jamal Hamlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Jamal writes, hey, Lou, what's up, Jamal? I think Ron's biggest mistake was underestimating what a weasel of an owner we have and how bad things really were. I think that is one of the best answers that I haven't thought of in any capacity yet. That is a great answer, actually, because clearly he underestimated. the Dan Snyder factor. He came here thinking that he was going to just get to coach football and that there's going to be a lot of off the field noise and stuff, but he'd be able to kind of circumvent that and just focus on ball. He thought that this was like coaching in Carolina, small market, media market, some shit happens. You kind of sweep it under the rug and keep it pushing. He didn't anticipate what he was getting himself into. And I don't think he talked to enough people. I don't think he talked to the right people. And thus, and look, in his defense, he couldn't have known that the name was, he didn't know that COVID was going to happen. George Floyd was going to happen. He didn't know that there was going to be this sweeping change across the country that was going to, Washington was going to be swept up in as well. He didn't know the name was going to change. He didn't know that all these articles were going to come out about Daniel Snyder and that he was going to have to be the face of the franchise and answer for a lot of that shit, or at least address it head on. He didn't know he was going to get cancer. He didn't know all of this shit was going to happen. None of it. But even in saying that, he grossly underestimated what it was going to be like coaching here. He had no idea what he was getting himself into. None. And I've said that numerous times, that if he would have known, if you give him some truth serum and you say, hey, Ron, knowing what you know now, if I can take you back to December of 2019, early stages of 2020 and January of 2020, would you have signed with the Washington then Redskins to be the next head coach of that organization? Knowing what you know now, I guarantee you he would say no. He had other options. He would not be here. I think that's a really good one. Jamal Hamlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, Lou, I'm petty when it comes to them boys. I'll move the Turners myself if he goes to Dallas. Just FYI, they can come to the barbecue. LOL. Look, whatever they need, anything they need from us, anything to make this a convenient and seamless transition, I'm on board. Sign me up. I would definitely be a part of the moving crew that moves his family to Dallas for him, to Irving, Texas, so that he can become the offensive coordinator. Hey, you want it right here, Scott? All right. Hey, come on, fellas, on 3. 1, 2, 3, lift. He says he wants it right here. Would love to have him go there and tear shit up. Rufio, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, just got my first job at Lycoma. 65% off for the mob. I don't know what that is, but congratulations. I don't even know if I said that right, but congratulations. Love it. Hope it's successful for you. I don't know if it's a career or if it's just a job, but congratulations either way. Congratulations. John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy JP writes, would Ron be desperate enough to save his job by going out and doing something insane like getting Brady or even Carr instead of giving Howell a shot? It would make more sense to go out and get a veteran if you're trying to save your job. It would, I think, behoove him to do that. Like, honestly, if this is it, I got 1 year to save my job. I've been through this before with the Panthers when they made an ownership change. I got 1 year to prove myself to these people who do not know me. They have no real allegiance to me. So they come in, and I've talked about this with GMs. It's no different with an owner, probably even more so with an owner. You won't put your thumbprint on it. You get to a new organization when a company hires, I'm not talking about sports anymore. I'm just talking about a company in general. You get a guy, or someone coming over from a company to a Fortune 500 company. You're the new CEO. You know what you want to do? One of the first things you want to put your thumbprint on. Like this last person was successful. Either he took a job somewhere else that was paying them more money, or they felt like they wanted to go in a different direction. That's why you're here. So now you're coming in and try to prove this is why they gave me the job. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to change some shit up, shake some things up, and hopefully it works. Ownership group comes in. I'm paying for this. A lot of money for it. I paid $6 billion for this shit. You damn right I'm coming in and making sweeping changes. First thing I'm starting with is the front office and the head coach. If Ron is aware of this, which he is because he's been through this before, the safest way, or the best way, I should say, not safe, because you could get like literally bottom of the barrel careers over Brady. You go out and get him, and Brady could look like what we saw at the end of the season, and we could be like, yo, Brady's finally washed. This is it. Father Time finally caught up with his ass, and he caught up with him in Washington. They would blame us for that, right? By the way, if Brady came here and was absolutely ass, we would get blamed for that, right? Anyway, it would probably behoove Ron to go the veteran quarterback route again. Rodgers, Carr, Brady, Garoppolo. Like, you don't have to trade for Derek Carr. You can wait him out. You can say, hey, nobody's trading for Derek Carr, man. Nobody's taking on that contract. We'll wait it out. I mean, we cool. We got Sam Howell. We don't have to do anything. We straight. But if you cut him, I'm interested. They could wait it out. They don't have to trade for Derek Carr. This ain't like last year where you had Taylor Heineke and you're like, yo, if we don't trade for a quarterback, we literally got to start Taylor Heineke. We are not prepared to do that shit. They got Sam Howell. They're prepared to start Sam Howell if they have to. But that's why I told you, don't preclude Washington from going after a veteran still. Like, I know the report that's out there, and they might have put that out there intentionally to throw people off the scent. It's Lions season. It officially has started. They could definitely be in the mix for a veteran quarterback. And if Ron's trying to save his job, who are you hitching your wagon to if you're Ron Rivera and you got 1 year to prove yourself to a new ownership group? You hitching your wagon to Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, hell, even Derek Carr, or are you hitching it to a second-year quarterback? I mean, that's your answer, but we'll see. Because no matter what Ron and company do with Sam Howell could throw for 5,000 yards, throw for 33 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. And if the defense isn't good enough, or we just lose in some shootouts, and we still end up 8-9 and miss the playoffs, you could say, look, man, they had some success with Sam. You could just give that credit to the offensive coordinator and say, hey, Ron, you fired. Offensive coordinator, if you want the job, it's yours. Or everybody's fired. Sam, you can stay, though. We'll find you another guy. I don't know if developing Sam Howell saves your job. I remember Jay Gruden being pissed off back in 2019 because he wanted nothing to do with Dwayne Haskins. He's like, if I have to take a quarterback, I'll take Drew Lock because he's ready to go. I can get him ready to play week 1. But Dwayne Haskins is like 2 years away from being a starter in this league. He's nowhere near ready. I need a guy in the first round that can help me win football games. Now I'm trying to save my job. And Daniel Snyder said, you're taking Dwayne Haskins. And the compromise was allowing them to trade back into the first round to get Montez Sweat. But in doing that, which didn't really hurt Jay, he wasn't here the next year, but you took away a second-round pick. Not only the second-round pick that year, because you had to trade, and it effectively turned into your second one, But you didn't have one the following year, which Jay could care less about. He wasn't here for that. But still, Jay didn't want any parts of a quarterback. Why? Because what is that going to do for me? Even if I prove that I'm the best fit for this young quarterback, you're not keeping me on the strength of that. I'm still getting fired. That's what Matt Nagy was saying about Justin Fields. I can commend him, though. I respect him and the GM Ryan Pace on their way out saying, look, our best shot might be to just try to develop Justin Fields and show them that, hey, give us another year with this dude and we can wreck some shit. Like us playing, I think it was Andy Dalton that year, us playing Andy Dalton and winning 10 games isn't going to save our job. We had a better chance of Justin Fields coming in here winning 7 games and him looking really good under our tutelage and us selling that to ownership that, hey, we did this with him with just 6 months of work. Give us a full offseason with this dude, and he's comfortable now with the playbook. I'm telling you, we can win 11, 12 games, and this dude can light the league on fire. That's another approach you can take. They still got fired. Clearly, it didn't work, and they weren't very good anyway. But I don't know. I think Ron's looking to do whatever he feels like is in his best interest. He'll tell you it's in the best interest of the team, but it's really in his best interest, which is what can save my job. I think the veteran quarterback is the route he would go to save his job. What's up, Lou? What's up? I just got my first job at Leica Communications. First 10 signups are completely free if anyone is interested. Mob only. If that's legit, y'all heard them. Do your thing. All right. So I don't know if that's a real thing or not. It may be. It's great. But again, I'm pretty sure, again, I haven't heard from Rufio in a very long time, so I'm assuming that this is luck. Again, it feels luckish. All of this feels luckish. And you know what makes it even worse is that I think he made a mistake somehow. So he doubled up and came back and corrected the mistake because it's spelled differently here. That's not how it was spelled the first time. So because I couldn't really pronounce it. So I think he switched it up here to try to make it sound more like something else. I'm up to Luck's tricks, man. This feels luckish. The Brandon J comment earlier felt luckish. Oh, this shit feels luckish to me. But I look, and y'all can just tell me I'm tripping. It could really be a real thing. And I'm just shook. That's fine. But this feels luckish. Add this to the list of shit that feels luckish to me. But anyway, I digress. Luck. See, I told you. What did I tell you? Luck. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, yeah, like my nuts. Good try, man. Good try. Oh, man. Good try, though. But that was a good one. But you didn't get me. But that was a good one. Anyway. Christopher McLaughlin, my guy, Chris. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. This feels like a double up. Could be a triple, but double up. Just in case. Thank you for the super chat. My guy, Chris writes, hey, Lou. How far do you think this team is, honestly, from being a top team in the NFC and why? We were 3 plays away from 11 wins. Find out if Howell is QB1, obtain a number 1 cornerback, and shore up the interior offensive line. So I've just explained to you that we're very close to 11 wins, but we were also very close to 3 or 4 wins as well. Could go either way. And I sincerely believe we were closer to that of 4 or 5 wins than we were 11 or 12 wins. You know, that said, I told you, when it was all said and done, we probably, with all the bullets that we did dodge, I really felt like we were where we were supposed to be. That Minnesota game, the Tennessee game, the Giants first game, the Giants second game, I think that was all karma for all of the shit that we had done earlier in the season and gotten away with. The Atlanta game, the Indy game, the Jacksonville game, the Bears game. Like we easily could have lost every single one of those games, and we won them. And so the Titans game, the Vikings game, the two Giants games, I think was a little bit, and even the Browns game to a much lesser degree, but all of those felt like balancing of the scales, if you will. That said, what are we, how far are we away? This league is, as you can see, you're literally, I think, better coaching and not even elite, just above average quarterback play. Because we have had nothing but average to below average quarterback play since Ron has taken over here in Washington. You get above average quarterback play with competent coaching. I think this roster is good enough. They've shown us that they're good enough to compete with just about anybody. Not necessarily win, but compete. There weren't many ass kickings handed out against Washington. Now, we were thoroughly dominated early in the season, but the scoreboard wasn't egregious. I think probably the most disheartening loss from a scoreboard perspective was probably the 49ers game. I don't even remember what that score ended up. We got a late garbage time touchdown to make it look a lot closer than what it was. What did it end up, like 38-21 or something like that? But obviously the Eagles game, and that was 24-8. Felt worse, a lot worse, but it was 24-8. You get above average quarterback play, stellar coaching, and I will say consistency from the defense, because that's something that we're lacking. And that may be getting a cornerback, a CB1 and kind of properly getting a slot, a nickel or whatever, getting Chase Young to go back to his rookie season form, whatever the case may be. I don't know what that looks like, but if you can get consistency from the defense, where it's not 1 week, they're lights out, the next week they can't stop this, or they're blown coverages, and you get above average quarterback play, consistently above average quarterback play, and good coaching, this team could be in the playoffs, win a game, and have a shot in the divisional round. Why not? I mean, you look at the conference. We're not the AFC. There isn't a Joe Burrow, a Patrick Mahomes, a Josh Allen, a Justin Herbert standing in the way. That's not what's on this side of the bracket. Daniel Jones won a playoff game this year. Daniel Jones. Let that sink in. Daniel Jones was 60 minutes away from playing in the NFC Championship game. Now, they were never close in that game, that 60 minutes. But just let that sink in for a second. We're not that far away. The best team in the league, we cooked their ass on their home turf. I don't want to hear no shit about, oh, we helped you. No, we created turnovers. Yep, we pulled Dallas Goedert's face mask and they didn't call it. Shit happens. Okay? We've had a lot of shit happen to us this year that didn't get called. Get in line. Okay? We took that game from them. We should have beaten Minnesota. We should have beaten the Giants. We did beat Dallas. We did beat Philadelphia. We could have beaten San Francisco. I know that sounds crazy. We could have been up 21-7 at half of that game. Should have been up 21-7. That was a weird, that reminded me of the Packers game from 2021. Weird game, man. That's one of those games you look back on and say, how did we manage to lose by 2 scores? 2, 3 scores, or whatever it ended up being. Same way I felt about that Packers game. I think we ended up losing that game like 24-10. And you're like, how could we manage to lose that game? And we dominated. We were dominating that game until the fourth quarter. Honestly. Dominate's a strong word. I shouldn't say that. We dominated the first half. I'll say that. They had a jet sweep that popped for a touchdown, and they got a 4th down stop against us, and John Dotson couldn't see a ball in the sun, and he dropped it. Would have been a touchdown. And then we scored on the last possession of the first half, a touchdown. It should have been 21 points in the first half. We picked off Brock Purdy in the first half of that game. You know, they weren't doing anything offensively, really. Then they exploded in the third quarter and fourth quarter. A defense showed up to start forcing turnovers. And then the shit fell apart. Anyway, we're not that far away, but we're not that close either. So the best I can tell you is we need some shit to go our way in a major way, and that usually doesn't happen to us. So while we're not that far away, we're really not that damn close either. You want 3 things? I gave you 3 things. Consistency from the defense, consistent above average quarterback play, top half of the league or hovering around there. 17th, 16th, 15th best quarterback play in the league should do the trick. And then you need better coaching. It wasn't good enough this year across the board. Luck, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Luck. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, if I didn't spell it wrong, you would have been toast. You might have got me. You were too sloppy with the handles. This is what happens when I apply pressure. I love the pressure. This is like I equate it to what the police do when they're looking for somebody. They put the squeeze on your ass. When they start knocking on doors, they knock your mama house, your aunt house, your cousin house, your ex-girlfriend, 2 ex-girlfriends ago. They went to her house. That's your last known residence when you was in jail, 2 years ago. So they knocked on her door. She's like, I ain't been messing with him for a year and a half. They start applying that pressure on your ass. Then finally you like, look, man, they done turned over every stone. Hey, I'm coming in, man. I'm going to bring my lawyer. That's how I'm applying that pressure on your ass. Now you're making mistakes. You slipping up. I love it. Donald Gray, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Donald. Feels like it's been a little while, Donald. Says, live from Kids Cove. Thanks, Lou. Get it? Mount Trashmore? Classic. Yeah. Somebody on Twitter hit me up and said, Lou, who are your quarterbacks on Mount Trashmore? I said, I see what you did there. Mount Trashmore. I deserve that. And I was serious too. Oh my goodness. All right, so got to the end of the comments. So I told you at the end of the show I would give you my Ron Rivera biggest mistakes, fill in the blanks. So I got 2 actually. I don't just have one. The first one sounds like this. Ron Rivera's biggest mistake in Washington to this point is his assembly of the coaching staff, his assemblance of this coaching staff, those that he's put in place around him. You start with the defensive line and Sam Mills III. From the moment he got here, he was public enemy number 1. Matt Ioannidis wanted to trade immediately. They loved Jim Tom. Remember how much praise was given to Jim Tom when he was here. Jonathan Allen called him the best coach he's ever had. This man played for Nick Saban. They loved him. So when he's gone, This next dude better come in here with his shit straight, ready to coach these boys up and get them to buy into whatever the hell he's trying to sell them. And clearly, he was not the man for the job. I showed them film of Ryan Kerrigan all the time. Well, they didn't want to see film of Ryan Kerrigan. That was a disaster. You had a really good tight ends coach in Pete Hainer, who decided to hang it up. We saw what he was able to do with Logan Thomas. Jack, I don't have a problem with Jack. Could you have done better at defensive coordinator? Probably. But I was on board with Jack. I'm not going to sit here and have revisionist history. I was on board with Jack. But Scott Turner was interesting because I didn't know a lot about him. Some Carolina fans came by when we first got him, and they were like, yeah, he's hit or miss. He ain't his dad, though. He ain't North. Good to know. We'll see what happens. Maybe he's better than North. No, he wasn't. What has failed Ron Rivera to this point is the people that he's put in charge at various positions haven't exceeded expectations. Look at the teams in the Final Four right now. And honestly, you could argue that it's a chicken or the egg complex. Which comes first? Does coaching tree success come because guys are really good coaches and other teams take notice of that independently of winning? Or does that only happen when you're winning football games? Then teams start calling and coming to start picking off of your tree. I don't know. That's a hard one to kind of digest because you're not seeing many coaches get opportunities on losing programs. Like, oh, y'all suck, but I will take this, quarterbacks coach and make him my offensive coordinator. Thanks. That's not what's happening a lot of times. But in saying that, look at the playoffs. And what's the common thread between the four teams? Because there's a lot of different things going on. A lot of things at work. But the one common thread I see with the four teams is coaching. And not only coaching, but it's the level of coaching you're getting from the assistants, the offensive coordinator and the defensive coordinator. I mean, look at the 49ers, for instance. So their director of player personnel just got a GM job. We want to interview, and I didn't even toot my own horn tonight. Toot, toot. I didn't even do that. I'll save that for another day. My Anthony Lynn stuff. We'll come back to that another day. I don't need to do that today. But I'm coming back to that. The day they interview him, you're going to hear my mouth. Anyway, Anthony Lynn is a guy that's been, I think, interviewed, once or twice already, and we plan to try to get our hands on him. D'Amico Ryans, man, he's hot right now. Block is hot. Robert Saleh, already a head coach. This is what happens when you're winning games, right? When you're going to the playoffs and you're in the NFC Championship game. Look at the Eagles. You know what? What's funny is I remember very vividly in the offseason of 2021 when he got the job and he was stuttering and stammering in his opening presser, and people were laughing at this guy. Oh, he's a buffoon. He's a clown. He got up there. He couldn't even talk. I said, that shit don't mean nothing. He might be a hell of a head coach. He might not like talking in front of people. He might have just been shy. This is his first time being in that spot. He might have been just excited. I know sometimes when I get really excited, my brain works faster than my mouth. And so I start mashing words together and shit like that. You get excited and you start putting words together and you start to sound incoherent. Shit happens sometimes. Look at Nick Sirianni now. But you know what he also did? Boy, did he put together one hell of a staff. My goodness. Same with Kyle Shanahan. Boy, did he put together one hell of a staff. I mean, people are tripping over themselves to get out there to San Francisco. You get fired looking for a place, Kyle's got a job for you. And you'll land on your feet after you on his staff for a year or two. You'll land back on your feet somewhere. Both of their coordinators in Philadelphia are being talked about for head coach. I still don't know why their defensive coordinator, Jonathan Gannon, is being considered for anything. Lead the league in sacks, almost, set a new franchise NFL record for most sacks in a season. And I guess you do that, right? But their offensive coordinator, Shane Steichen, definitely deserves to be in coaching, conversations. How about Andy Reid? I mean, shit, that's a factory over there, right? We've been trying to get his offensive coordinator a job for 15 years, but despite that, I mean, people have been picking off the Andy Reid tree for years. Matt Nagy. I mean, we can go on and on and on with dudes that have gotten jobs. I mean, Doug Peterson. I mean, that's Frank Reich. That's the Andy Reid tree, right? And then Cincinnati. You look at the job that's being done with the Bengals, and I can't help but look at the job that's being done with the two coordinators in particular. It's one thing to have a ton of talent. It's another thing to actually take that talent and maximize it. Cincinnati does it both on offense and defense. Both of their coordinators are exceptional. Brian Callahan will get an opportunity to be a head coach again, or a head coach in this league at some point, I believe. So, and I think even if he doesn't, Lou Almirono will be in that discussion, and he deserves to be. He's doing a masterful job with that defense. Have we had any guys that have been in that conversation that Ron assembled with this staff? Any of them? I remember after the first year, Scott Turner's name came up, but it never was serious. No one ever called Scott Turner for an interview or anything like that. That was just people talking about who they thought they were projecting. After the job he did, and he did a hell of a job. His best job was the first year here in 2020 with 18 different quarterbacks, no talent at receiver other than Terry McLaurin. It was literally Terry McLaurin, Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissick, and Logan Thomas. That was your offense. And somehow he managed to do enough to get us into the playoffs. Again, I get it. Division was down. We were terrible. So was the rest of the division. Doesn't matter. We were the best of the worst. But since Ron has gotten here, not one single guy has been looked at as, hey, he's up and coming, other than who? Chris Harris, and he's gone. He was the one guy that was perceived to be some sort of a rock star. And really, I wouldn't say he was a rock star, more like a roadie, more like a backup singer that you're like, hey, man, he can really sing. If he ever gets a chance to cut his own record, man, look out. The staff that he's put together has been very underwhelming. I really think that's cost him. Truly, I do. I think the single biggest issue Ron has had, the biggest mistake he's made in coming to Washington, and we could continue to go on with what I just said, the coaching piece, but we don't need to. I think you get it. I think the biggest single mistake he's made here in Washington is not finding a quarterback. And it's not easy to do. But he had a chance in 2020 in his first draft. Clearly he took Chase Young. I would have taken Chase Young. I'm not blaming him for that. In that moment, I would have taken Chase Young. It was not even a question. It wasn't even anything to discuss. It was Chase Young all the way. If you couldn't get Burrow, I didn't want anybody else. Chase Young. 2021, he swung for Matthew Stafford. He missed. He settled on Ryan Fitzpatrick. That was a mistake. Could have traded up in that draft class, could have gotten, Justin Fields or some other quarterback, Mac Jones, whomever. Didn't do it. In hindsight, probably a mistake. I didn't want any of those guys. If I couldn't get my hands on Zach Wilson, that would have been a mistake. Maybe it would have been a mistake. Maybe it wouldn't have been if he's in Washington instead of New York. I don't know. But I wanted Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, or Trey Lance. Those guys were all gone within the first 3 picks. Wasn't going to get those guys. I wasn't interested in any of the constellation prizes. Consolation prizes, rather. 2022. You swing for Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson, you end up with Carson Wentz. Hell, you were even sniffing around Jimmy Garoppolo, and if not for shoulder surgery, maybe he ends up here. Whatever the case may be, you get Carson Wentz. That was a disaster. Ron never had to deal with this in Carolina. When he did, he got fired. He's never been able to find a quarterback. He took the job falling into the number 1 pick. They were the worst team in football the year he got there. And so he walked into the 2011 draft saying, hey, let's do our homework on this Cam Newton kid, see if he's legit. If he is, if he checks out, we got our guy. He didn't have to look for a quarterback. He didn't have to go through that process. Cam gets hurt towards the end of his tenure in Carolina. He didn't know what to do. Never really went out and got a guy. He had a bunch of backups toward the end of his career that were there behind Cam all those years. And it didn't work. Then you tried to go the young quarterback route. That shit didn't work either. I'm not sure I don't think he was there for the Will Grier, brief stint in Carolina. I don't think Ron was there for that. I could be wrong. He might have been. But they failed miserably at that. He gets here and he's never, you want to know why he hasn't had any success? It's because he hasn't been able to nail down the quarterback position. I mean, we could talk about all the other stuff, and there are other, factors that you could definitely point to as reasons why this team, and he's a part of that. Some of his, lack indecisiveness in games and some of his decisions that he's, made have directly, added to why we lost games. They directly were a part of the reason why we lost. But the reason that I always come back to is that we found a way to not get a quarterback. And if you want to win in this league, you have to take care of the most important position in football. And he hasn't been able to do that. And most coaches that get fired, most of them get fired because of that same reason. They couldn't find a quarterback that could stabilize their situation. That's the fastest way to getting fired in this league, not having a quarterback. Frank Reich went from making the playoffs with Phillip Rivers, almost stealing the game on the road in Buffalo, to missing the playoffs with Carson Wentz, to being fired the next year with Matt Ryan, Sam Ellinger, and company. It can happen to you quick. Doug Peterson got fired because Carson Wentz was ass in 2020. He went from a Super Bowl winning coach in 2017 to fired in 2020 because Carson Wentz deteriorated. Literally. Cincinnati's head coach, Zach Taylor, this close to being fired. This close. Till Joe Burrow came in and saved his ass. Remember, Taylor got there the year before Joe Burrow got there. They were ass. They had Jeff Driscoll at quarterback for much of that year. They draft Burrow. The next year, he's playing okay. They're still losing games, but yeah, look, you can see what this kid's going to be. And then he comes to Washington and loses his ACL. And they were horrible. They were this close to firing Zach Taylor. Burrow comes back off the injury. They make it to the Super Bowl. The rest is history. You get that quarterback. You can, if Sam Howell is good, he'll erase a lot of the wrong that Ron Rivera that has done here in Washington. He'll erase a lot of that shit. If he's not, all of that should have come to the forefront and Ron will get fired. But if you want to point to ultimately why he wasn't fired, you know what saved Jay Gruden all those years? Y'all, I mean, I know a lot of y'all hate when I talk about Kirk. Kirk saved Jay Gruden, man. Let's keep it a buck. Our defense was horrible the entire time Kirk Cousins was here. The entire time. The defense was ass. The entire time. He had no run game. The entire time. We were starting guys like Fat Rob at running back. It was a joke. Capri Bibbs. Are you kidding me? This is the shit we're doing at running back. And he's still out throwing for damn near 5,000 yards. Setting franchise records. That's what saved Jay Gruden's job all those years. He would have been fired. If Jay had to deal with what Ron has dealt with at quarter, Jay Gruden wouldn't have made it to a second contract. Ron's biggest problem here in Washington, the biggest mistake is not figuring out a plan. I have another one. I got one more. I lied. I got one more. Another big mistake. This could be categorized as another one of his biggest mistakes. Lack of identity. You know, Ron has never really clarified exactly what the hell it is he wants to be. When they first got here, Ron made it abundantly clear that he wanted to throw the football, which is why I think he brought Scott Turner here, because I told everyone, I've done a little bit of homework. There wasn't a lot to do, but I did a little bit of homework on Scott Turner. I said, one thing I can assure you of is he wants to throw it more than he runs it. He wants to throw the football. That's Scott Turner. Doesn't really have the weapons here to do it. Not with old Case Keenum, you know, at quarterback. When did we have that first year? It was, I think Case was 19. Case was gone by the time he got here. It was Dwayne, and Dwayne got the first crack. Who was Kyle Allen? It was Kyle Allen. That's right. Oh, Kyle Allen. Ron has been really skittish on what it is he's trying to accomplish. Do you want to run the football? Do you want to throw it? The personnel that you've assembled, if you're so hell-bent on being old school, running the football, that's what you believe in, why did you draft Jahan Dotson? Why not spend that pick on an offensive lineman? Your GM is screaming, we should draft Kenyon Green out of Texas A&M. If you really, truly want to run the football, if that's who you want to be, if that's your DNA, you want to be a physical team, then you should be spending resources on the offensive line, not going out of the scrap heap and signing Charles Leno Jr. and making him your starting left tackle. That's not how you strike an identity. That's not how you establish dominance in the trenches. Not by going and getting a couple of retreads from Carolina and trying to recreate their heyday here in Washington. If you truly want to establish dominance in the trenches, then put forth the resources there. You're sending mixed signals. You got Terry. You go out and get Curtis Samuel. You draft Jahan Dotson. Sounds like you want to throw the football. You swung and missed on Matthew Stafford. You swung and missed on Russell Wilson. Sounds like you want to throw the damn football. But then you tell us out of the side of your mouth, I want to run it. I want to be a physical team. Is that because you don't think you have the quarterback, or is that really what you want to do? I'm confused because the offensive line you've assembled, I don't give a shit who's that quarterback. That shit ain't cutting it. Not if you want to be a physical, dominant team up front. You haven't spent any draft capital other than Sam Cosmi. What are you really trying to establish here? You take a running back that you think, because Scott Turner told you, hey, he could be Christian McCaffrey in this offense. So you draft a guy that's never played running back, turn him into a running back. That's supposed to be the lead dog at running back, which I didn't have a problem with. Super talented. But again, if you're really trying to establish the run, if that's who you want this team to be, that's what the DNA and the fabric of this team is supposed to be, then you should have gotten an established running back, not a guy in the league. I'm talking about a real college running back that can come in here and pick up the load and carry it. What are you trying to accomplish? I'm confused. Are you trying to be a dynamic offense, or are you trying to be a grind it out, run the clock, win time of possession type of football team? I feel like he's been sending mixed signals since he got here. I don't know if he's actually ever, you know what's funny is when they asked the players, they asked Charles Leno, what's the identity of this team? He said, I don't know. We're 3 years into Ron Rivera. And his players who have been here the entire time. Ask Terry McLaurin. I bet you he says, I don't know what the identity of this team is. I can't tell you. Charles Leno has been here 2 out of the 3 years for Rivera. He doesn't know what the identity of this team is. Nobody does. Ron doesn't even know. Those are mine. Those are my 3 things. Anyway, I digress. Enough of me babbling and running my mouth. I'm out of here. You guys enjoy the rest of your evening. I will chop it up with you guys. What's today? Thursday. I'll probably have something for you Saturday. I'll probably drop something for you Saturday. We'll see. Can't guarantee you that. There's no football, so I might drop something Saturday. Obviously, I got a podcast tomorrow. We'll preview and predict the outcome of Super Sunday, Championship Sunday in the NFL. And then we'll come back and chop it up again next week. So keep tabs on the offensive coordinator search. I don't think this thing is coming to a close anytime soon. They got to make something happen because eventually you're going to be, most of the staff is going to be down there in Mobile. You know, Jennifer King is the running backs coach. So you're going to turn a lot of your attention, all your scouts, anybody that matters in the organization, including Ron himself, who didn't go last year. He spent time with his family. Maybe he'll do that again this year. But everybody, the GM, both GMs, you know, or front office personnel, everybody going to be in Mobile for the Senior Bowl. That's the week between the championship weekend and the Super Bowl. That 1 week where there's no football, that's the Senior Bowl week. So I imagine that if you want to hire an offensive coordinator, you'd probably want to do it before then. But one of the guys that you're interested in that you've already interviewed in Charles London, he's going to be the offensive coordinator at the Senior Bowl. Maybe you get to see him in action. Maybe he has a chance to impress you. I don't know. I don't really know what they're looking for. Again, we don't have an identity. So how the hell am I supposed to know what they're looking for if they don't even know what the hell they're looking for? Anyway, I digress. You guys have a good one. Take care. You know what it is. Post up and take command. Until next time, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. God bless and good night.